The story kicks off in the freezing mountain ranges, the spot chosen by the 9 major sects for a meet up with major about to go down vibes. Snowy rocks, several masters are booking it, showing just how crazy urgent this whole mess is. Distance, a young dude realizes that the Sword Emperor, the Blade Emperor, and the Spear Ghost, 3 absolute martial arts legends, are in the house. Straw Hat, he notices these squads came fully stacked to take on one seriously OP boss. Seeing at his long-haired buddy, he says that even though their excuse is stopping a disaster, their real motives are super sus. Reddish aura oozes from the hairy dude, proving his power level is off the charts. Getting back to it, the hat guy complains about them running late, betting the target definitely won't survive today. Keeping his cool, the hairy guy asks if his buddy really buys that, reminding him the target already has big villain energy, and this ending was totally predictable. He brings up the terrifying foes he had to defeat, wondering if maybe those guys were the actual final bosses of the world. Twist is that his sword also took out society's idols, practically wiping out top-tier factions. Thanks to his hardcore actions, major sects had to shut down for 10 years after taking massive L's. The hat dude agrees the guy deserves to be sent to the lobby for hurting so many innocent NPCs. In the very next breath, he starts doubting if those victims were actually all that innocent. Staring at the pristine mountain, he cringes at the hypocrisy, realizing a clean skin doesn't mean a good vibe. Smash cut to a messy battle. Scarred zone, someone battered tries to get back up, totally confused about what's glitching. Shook by the wrecked map around him, he hears voices calling him the Blood Demon. The sect leaders trash talk him, calling him absolute garbage for tossing justice and honor out the window. Out of HP and bruised, he's told he's gonna pay a huge price for griefing the server. His mind, though, logs out to the past, flashing back to chill moments reading in the square with his beloved wife. He also remembers his little girl sleeping peacefully in his lap, a time when he felt safe and life was literally perfect. Remembering that wholesome family vibe brings a quick warm buff to his heart before facing the bitter reality. The tragedy started when his wife randomly passed away from some mystery glitch, leaving him completely wrecked, after his house was griefed by a purposeful fire caused by some martial artists beefing. During that awful disaster, his innocent little girl met a fiery end. Since then, his only reason to log in became payback, wiping out multiple corrupt tryhards no matter their clan. Sitting in the rubble, he gets down, knowing they see his quest for justice as pure toxicity. An amulet tight, the MC thinks it's a joke being called a heartless monster by these clowns. Remembering his kid's sweet smile, he starts questioning the moral compass of the haters canceling him. Pissed off, he asks what a kid did wrong, claiming the hypocrites there should pay for their own toxic behavior. Standing his ground, the blood demon glares at the big names who cowardly ganged up to catch him lacking. Steps up, asking if he doesn't feel any shame under the sky for his toxic plays. Backing down, the warrior claps back coldly that he just did what he had to do to take out the trash. His broken sword, he calls out the leaders for being the real garbage that deserves to get unalived. Zero chill left, he screams with all his might against their fake judgment. He exposes that those boomers are hiding their own crimes and using him as a scapegoat while acting all holy. Demon's dark glare proves his not taking this cap lying down. Warrior decides to skip the cutscene and suggests an all-out attack, but gets warned to watch out for the enemy's ultimate move. Reading their true motives, the MC realizes the squad just wants to capture him alive to steal his martial arts guide. He feels massive disgust seeing the greedy vibes hiding in those so-called legends. Super obvious their whole speech about honor and justice is just a flex to farm more power. King his blade, he accepts the challenge and decides to cancel their little theater production once and for all, promising to send everyone there back to the lobby. A majestic golden aura pops off around him. His saved up buffs, the warrior drops a massive energy wave that blows the snow away. Zero time, he rushes in like a lightning bolt with absolute laser focus. Speedy and cracked hits, his sword starts slicing through the hypocrite leaders in his way. Fiery arc combo, the MC knocks the haters back with insane knockback damage. Stays standing surrounded by downed enemies, flexing that he's not logging off without taking a squad with him. On the battlefield peaks, while his sword drips after the massive strike. HP bar is flashing red with critical damage. He challenges the rest of the lobby to a one-on-one. Seeing the solo wipe he just pulled off the big dude, and the white-haired boomer switch to a way sweatier defense stance. The buff warrior spams insults and rushes in for an aggro push. Teaming up, the giant goes for a jump attack, while the boomer swordsman tries a sneaky low sweep. In a crazy clash, the master's ultimate moves collide, mixing heavy fire and blue lightning into a massive explosion. Under all that pressure, the blood demon surprises everyone by smirking, actually hyped for the brawl. Popping his golden aura, he manages to parry the attack and redirect the insane energy of the double strike. Shook by the ridiculous defense stats of a guy already on low health, the two masters backpedal. The stunlock window, the MC pushes them both away with a raw physical shockwave, up into a high-speed combo exchange, swords clashing with crazy animations. Thanks to the massive recoil, the MC slides down the mountain, feeling his stamina hitting zero. Side the giant holds his banged up arm, admitting the enemy's god tier art is no joke. His balance after sliding, the warrior admits those two aren't just clout chasers, their hype is real. Out of nowhere, a fresh speedy strike cuts the air from the side, almost catching him lacking. White-haired fighter thrusts his spear like a madman, forcing the MC to burn his last dodges. For some space, the blood demon barely side steps a focused energy beam. In the snow, the spear guy gives props for the dodge, but warns the tutorial is over. Eyes practically glowing, the new challenger spins his spear at max speed, charging a finisher. Meteor shower of fire strikes the MC head on, launching him violently into the rocks. Hiding in the smoke of his own ultimate, the spearman smirks, flexing way too much confidence. The warrior takes a brutal hit from a massive blue energy blast, catching a total stun lock with no parry window. Smoke clears, the MC is glued to the icy floor while the spearman slow walks over, and out of breath the warrior tries to scrape together whatever mana he's got left. The master stops right in front of him, trolling the legendary blood demon for looking so tragic. Nice, he offers to spare the kid if he leaks the coordinates of the hidden god tier manual on his cracked blade. The MC mentally notes his HP and stamina are fully drained. While taking the L, he glares with pure edge, promising himself he's not catching a game over here. Freaked out by the enemy's sheer willpower, the spearman pauses his attack animation for a second. The MC funnels every last drop of his mana into the broken sword. To sacrifice his own account, he unleashes a destructive pitch black aura. Spooked by that hacked power level, the boomers realize the warrior plans to server wipe everyone with him. The spear guy yells to interrupt the target before the counter attack goes off. Was too late, and a colossal energy nuke swallows the whole zone. Attack splits the sky, deleting everything around. In the blast radius, the blood demon realizes his avatar has reached its hard limit. Wiped, he gets hit with the feels, knowing his time in this lobby is up. Zero stamina to keep fighting, he collapses on the freezing mountain floor. Hitting the ground, he regrets big time that he did get to finish his revenge quest. In his final moments, his wife's sweet voice begging for forgiveness plays on loop in his head. He tries to sync up with the memory of his favorite person. The comfort of that mental hug gives him a split second of peace before his screen goes black. Just when he thought it was game over, he feels an actual hand grabbing his hype. Little Soil calls out for her dad. Up super dizzy, Yul tries to fix his graphics settings while his kid jumps all over him. Wife sweetly asks if he's awake. Happy, the little girl sprints straight into her mom's arms. Bugging out over what's happening, he's totally shook, realizing he just time traveled. Seeing his family alive and well hits him with a massive wave of relief. From outside, he can hear the chill sounds of his daughter playing around. The peaceful view shows the kid flexing a flower crown her mom crafted for her. Even after days of watching this, he still finds it crazy hard to believe this peaceful server is real. Thinking back to his drop on the mountains, he wonders if he's not just stuck in some high-tier illusion. Realizes those toxic tryhards would never stoop to using a trick like that. Connecting the dots, he accepts the only patch notes that make sense. The warrior gets hit with the reality that he actually respawned in the past. Watching his kid play, he knows this chill vibe has a countdown timer. Grinning at his girl running over to him, Yul locks in a decision. Hugging his daughter, the dad promises himself he'll block the tragedy from happening again. He notes he needs to speedrun things to secure a safe late game for both of them. Soon after, his wife hands him an inventory bag of supplies for his planned trip. Her husband's stress, she totally gets his sudden AFK moment and just asks him to come back in one piece. Her mom, the little girl, asks if she can't tag along on the quest. He promises to bring back the good snacks if she acts like a top-tier NPC. Bribes, Soil waves goodbye, super hyped. Head out, he takes one last screenshot of his beloved family in his mind. Grindset energy, Yul starts his risky mission. Walking down the empty road, the warrior swears he'll break the game's limits to protect them. The only glitch is his current build doesn't have the insane stats of his future self. Without his blood demon buffs, he realizes he's super squishy right now. Staring at the entrance of a dark cave, he knows exactly where to farm the solution. Squeezing through a rocky hallway, he pushes to the very back of the cave. Touching the gross floor, the MC remembers how he leveled up from a standard NPC to an absolute legend. Sitting there, he reviews his strats for how he conquered the martial world in his past playthrough. Cheat code for his win was the loot dropped by the greatest warrior of all time. Hard at the ancient skeleton, he admits finding this spot was pure RNG luck. Yul got violently griefed by toxic warriors on a rainy night. Super low on HP, the guy dragged himself through the mud trying to pull a desperate escape. Tilted by his own low stats, he punched the dirt for failing to keep his family safe. The heavy vibes of not getting payback on the guys who took out his daughter totally hijacked his brain. He actually managed to track down the guild master, who raided his village so ruthlessly. Since he was just a regular dude, he got fast traveled to the lobby by the minions. Was exactly during that wild forest escape that he clipped out of bounds and fell into this cave. Hyped that he remembered the exact map coordinates in this new run, he approaches the legendary skeleton. Curious, the warrior wonders if the god-tier item will spawn like it did last time. As if to say yes, a magical orb starts rendering in the skeleton's lap. The whole dark room lights up from the heavy golden glow of the drop. With mana, the martial god's loot finally reveals itself to the MC. Looking closely, he thinks it's wild how this ancient buff chose him as its main twice. Gets flooded with the martial god's boss aura, proving the skill tree is legit. Without missing a beat, the warrior reaches out to claim the item. Gripping the golden core, he says with total confidence that this is his chance to reboot the game. Instantly, a fiery aura wraps around the guy, kicking off his character evolution. Chest straight up absorbs the mystic item. Feeling the crazy shockwave hit his system, he grits his teeth to tank the heavy load. Remembering he's played this level before, he forces health to power through the cursed pain. Embracing the brutal debuff, Yule screams to unlock the stats needed to save his family. In a super sketchy area far away, crows circle over a total disaster zone. Among a bunch of downed players, the edgy boss announces the worst phase hasn't even started. Acting totally unhinged, the villain claims darkness is about to swallow the whole server. He's basically counting the frames until he can spam his area of effect attacks. Flash, the guy's sword slices the air with absolute zero chill. Hit strikes someone already on the ground, wrapping the cutscene with a showcase of pure toxicity. Snaps, his eyes open, gasping for air. Totally revamped and fully healed, Yule breathes heavy, trying to catch his stamina. Chilling in the cave, he wonders how long he was AFK, but quickly focuses on the trippy vision he just had. Cutscene felt way too high rest to just be a dream. It was totally new lore for him. Checking out the dusty bones the young dude figures he just cinched with the martial god's own cloud saves. Flexing his hand, he feels his new mana pool and knows for sure he legit time traveled. Standing up and dropping a cracked aura, the warrior realizes he downloaded the god tier skill and got a physical rework. In his past run, he was called a beast while only at level 2, but now he knows he's gotta grind higher to change the script. Breaking the epic mood, the MC realizes he's covered in grime from head to toe. Tossing his busted gear, he jokes that doing this whole character reset a second time is way smoother. Geared up with his backpack, Yule stands in front of the bones of the guy who carried him. His hands together respectfully, he drops a salute to the master who gifted him an extra life. Keeping it 100, the warrior thanks him out loud for the priceless carry. He promises to use the buff to save his family and swears to pay it forward if he ever gets the chance. Good about his stealth quest, he turns around and heads for the cave exit. Hitting the sunlight, the dude feels the breeze on his face. The open world, he decides it's the perfect time to beta test his new stats. His knees, he funnels mana into his legs to charge up a jump. The warrior launches into the sky with a cracked leap that shatters the floor and kicks up dust. Glitchy speeds, he glides over the trees like a bird zooming through the map. Passing the green mountains, he hypes himself up, saying he's finally heading back to base. Bad, and with laser focus, the dad speedruns his way back to his favorite squad. The chill forest vibes show his waypoint is just up ahead. Sticking the landing smoothly in the woods, Yule realizes he was logged out in that cave for 2 whole days. He burned precious time. He hits the sprint button because he has to. NPC life in the chill Sodam village is running as usual. Yule's wife happily walks through town holding hands with Soil, getting friendly emotes from the locals. You can totally see the good vibes they get when a shopkeeper waves at them super hyped. A classy older lady stops to drop a compliment, saying they're the best looking duo in the server. A stall, the vendor greets them brightly, but finds it sus that the husband isn't in the party. The stall owner hands a sweet treat on a stick to the kid, totally ignoring the adults. Slashes a massive smile and says thanks for the loot, eyes literally sparkling. While the kid happily munches, the mom also drops a thank you for the wholesome interaction. The vendor asks about the hubby, and finding out his out of bounds tells them to head back to base early. Confused, the wife asks what's up, and the lady drops the tea that a toxic guild is about to raid the area. Pan to the town square, a griefer steps on a downed local, violently demanding their protection tax. A minion holds another dude, saying they just want the credits, while the victim calls out the blatant scam. The squad leader gets incredibly tilted over being called a basic thug. Zero patience left, the big guy starts pulling his blade to issue a ban on the villager. The town elder starts panicking, seeing the moderation completely fail. The old man quickly jumps in front of the griefer, swearing they'll pay the server fees. Full surrender, he begs the giant to chill and not lower anyone's HP. Loving the power trip, the thug drops the guy and sarcastically warns they'll be back later to take care of them. The squad rolls out laughing, leaving the server population totally rattled and scared. Watching from the sidelines, Yule's wife gets anxious, praying her husband doesn't cross paths with those mobs. Catching the bad vibes, the mom grabs Soil's hand and says they need to fast travel home right now. A rustle in the leaves suddenly grabs their attention. With pure hype, Soil asks innocently if her dad finally spawned in. Both freeze on the dirt road, staring hopefully at the empty path. Off, a shot of a lone kid walking down the road gives off massive single-player vibes. In the tree line, Yule monitors the forest activity in total stealth mode. The bandit boss tosses a coin bag in the air, celebrating the easy raid. Strolling down the path, the goons gas up their boss, hyping how simple it is to farm this noob village. Total trash. They plan to loot the whole town, then traffic the women and force the guys to grind for them. Pausing the villain's walk cycle, a frosty voice drops from behind saying the chat is getting interesting. Spooked, the three griefers instantly stop and snap their cameras around. Staring at the young dude blocking the path, the leader scowls and arrogantly asks for his gamer tag. Serious glare, the MC casually offers them exactly one chance to not get wiped. Demands the credits back, an apology, and a promise they'll never respawn here, but the villains just hold back laughs. It's a troll post. The giant lets out a booming mock laugh. He's got the high ground. The boss steps up sarcastically asking since when this map had a superhero. Poking Yule's chest, he talks trash claiming the kid is the one who needs a carry right now. A single warning frame, Yule delivers a brutal uppercut at glitch, level speed. The crushing impact literally reshapes the giant's face before his brain can even process it. Zero parry window, the boss goes flying backward, bowling over his own teammates. Hits the dirt, totally knocked out while his buddy gets stunned, locked, stuttering in shock, raging over his leader getting one. Tap, the minion pulls his sword, absolutely tilted by the disrespect. Jumping like a try-hard, he swings his blade at the warrior, who just watches the animation play out. Dropping his icy expression, the MC simply clenches his fist. The opening, he lands a devastating gut punch on the thug. Looking at the downed players, Yule roasts their pathetic performance. He says it's a bummer they wiped, because he just gave them a golden ticket out, leaving the conscious thug totally shook. In his head, the giant is screaming internally, realizing the kid perfectly hit critical spots with invisible speed. And's face is pure nightmare fuel as he tries to process the stranger's hacked stats. Shaking and fully defeated, the boss crawls on the ground asking who this raid boss is, and Yule answers super chill. Standing there looking zen, Yule says he's just the local NPC who teaches reading and writing. Leader tenses up when he realizes he's the only one not in sleep mode. Stare, the MC asks what the big guy's next move is. In a flash, the bag of stolen loot is dropped back onto the ground. The elder and the locals watch super confused as the villain boss drops to his knees for basically no reason they can see. Absolutely terrified, the giant cries for a pardon, saying he's experiencing major regrets. To prove he's not trolling, he starts stripping off his gear to hand over everything, making the old man super awkward. The bandit runs off in his boxers, swearing he dropped the loot, and is permanently banning himself from the server. The villagers are just frozen on the path. Brain error 4. Oh, 4 trying to compute what just happened. Way out there, the boss runs out of breath through the woods, claiming he already cleared the quest requirements. Stops on a dime, looking back with pure paranoia, wondering if he's actually cleared to leave. Warrior blocks his escape route, asking where exactly he thinks he's fast traveling to keep his HP above 0. The thug promises to move servers, live a clean life, and quit the griefer lifestyle. Scanning the response, Yule repeats clean life with massive doubt. It's incredibly heavy and quiet as the MC processes what he just heard. Yule asks if the thug actually believes players can change their toxic mains. Starts sweating bullets when he realizes the kid knows they deserted a high-tier toxic guild. MC flashes back to how this exact same squad griefed his village in his previous playthrough and enslaved everyone. He sadly remembers the server admins wiped out the bandits months later, but his base was already ruins. The warrior states that this trash is going to pay for their unbannable offenses. Slow walking up to the target, he drops a cold truth bomb that trolls like them never actually reform. His escape routes are 0. The giant's eyes go wide as he accepts the game over screen. The MC's edgy aura floods the zone as the bandit realizes he was never making it out of this lobby. Smashing the heavy mood, we cut to Soil chilling at base playing with some rocks. Suddenly looks up when she hears an audio cue at the gate. Seeing Yule spawn back, and she drops a massive smile and yells his name. The kid sprints and tackles him with a hug, totally missing him, while the wife walks over too. The wife asks about the lag in his arrival and looks super relieved his health bar is full. The MC apologizes and totally caps, saying he just had to carry some extra students. Soil adorably threatens to smack him if he's late again, which totally chills mom out since he clearly dodged the raid. Taking a good look at her hubby, the wife notices his avatar got a massive graphics update. She touches Yule's face and asks what kind of skincare routine he unlocked. Inspecting the warrior up close with the kid, the wife mentions he looks buffed with way wider shoulders. The wife squishes his cheeks. The guy realizes he toggled off his aura, but the physical rework is way too obvious. Gets totally awkward because he has 0 lore. Friendly excuses for the glow up. A chill tone, the wife demands to know what he did, sounding low key terrifying. Sweating hard from the interrogation, he scrambles for a decent lie to diffuse the aggro. Luck, his stomach loudly growls, perfectly interrupting the chat. Blinks, totally caught off guard by the random audio glitch. Seeing his stamina is actually drained, she drops the scary mom act and bursts out laughing. Chuckling at the cringe moment, the wife asks if he even used any consumables on the trip. She decides to drop the questions and invites him inside for some soup to restore his stats. By the bell, Yule follows his squad, hyping up the food. He freezes in the yard when his radar pings a major hazard in the air. Grabbing his wife's wrist, the MC uses his aura to run a quick diagnostic on her. He spots massive red flags in her internal mana flow, gets consumed by pure rage when he realizes these debuffs are way worse than just a random illness. The mom and kid are peacefully logged out in a quiet room. Standing by the bed, Yul looks at his wife looking sad, flashing back to his hardcore past. Physically hurts remembering she had these exact same status effects in his previous save file. His hands glowing gold, the warrior channels a healing spell to locate the poison inside her. She groans from the pain while he confirms some coward totally slipped her a toxic debuff. He notices the highest tick damage is right in her core, meaning she got hit recently. Focused purely on cleansing her, he cranks up his aura's power to delete the malware for good. He moves his hands with insane precision so he doesn't accidentally hit any of her critical hitboxes. Face totally relaxes the second the toxic energy leaves her system. Catching the poison cloud in his hand, Yul inspects the glowing green gunk like a pro. Spikes when he realizes it's a fatal item designed to inflict max damage over time. A dark thought hits him that he totally failed the perception check on this in his original playthrough. Stroking her face, he realizes her glitchy death back then was RNG. It was a completely scripted hit. The warrior remembers Shez from the Peng clan, meaning only a high-level rogue could have poisoned her without triggering a grow. Locked in glare, he swears to ruthlessly wipe out anyone who messes with his squad. Day, the wife smiles, saying Shez taking soil on a side quest to the market. From the gate, Yul wishes them a good run, while the kid promises they won't be long. Watching them head down the street, he decides it's time to deal with the stealth camper. The tree's a sketchy dude mutters, totally confused about why the poison debuff vanished from his tracker. Scoping from afar, he watches the wife at the market, and assumes he just fumbled the initial poison dosage. Sneaking through the woods, the thug figures a second strike will definitely clear the mission. Out of nowhere, the sound of heavy footsteps drops alongside a voice claiming they found the target. Spooked by the sudden aggro, the villain jumps, seeing the MC in the shadows announcing he caught the griefer. His usual ice-cold face, Yul ignores the enemy's panic and says he just has one question. Daggers, the guy is having a total internal meltdown because his radar didn't pick Yul up at all. Violently, the assassin realizes it's the target's husband and decides to lure dump while fighting. Even blinking at the attack, the MC listens to the villain claim the wife cheated with some mystery dude. Gripping his knives tight, the minion preps a finisher to reveal who actually handed out the quest. Pushing forward, the assassin goes for a fatal strike, mocking that the warrior will only get the lore after he hits the game over screen. Yul doesn't even flinch, parrying the rush with ridiculous ease. Smooth combo, he deflects the hit and disarms the dude instantly. Stun, locked, the minion can't believe his ultimate got cancelled that fast. The whiff, Yul lands a brutal heavy punch right on the enemy's face. The crazy knockback launches the thug flying uncontrollably through the forest map. Smashes hard into a tree, ending up flattened and fully defeated on the dirt. Slow walking over to the target, the husband demands to know which boss issued the hit. Shaking like a leaf, the minion stutters out a confession that it was the oldest son of the Tang clan. The warrior's face goes fully dark as he thinks about that cowardly NPC's name. Mug of Tang Gawai pops into his head instantly. Is basically famous for maining stealth weapons and toxic builds. Confused, Yul asks why they'd target the Peng family's daughter, wondering if the assassin even checked her lore. Spills that the whole server knows the young master is a massive simp for Yul's wife. He says the Tangs tried to force a marriage event, but she pulled a midnight escape with some scholar. Processing this, the MC realizes they were really just dodging her clan's toxic daily quests back then. At the end of the day, that rich guild would never accept a broke, guildless noob like him. The minion adds that the escape happened exactly when the proposal dropped, so the villain blamed the scholar for ruining his run. Understanding the petty lore, Yul gets incredibly tilted over the absolute disrespect of attacking his family. Yul's gear, the assassin begs to keep his account active since he leaked the intel. Staring at the floor loot, the husband sarcastically asks why he should let him walk, and if he isn't scared of the Tang guild. Trying to survive on fear tactics, the criminal screams that the Tangs will permaban him if he tries anything, some edgy clan motto about the Tang family never leaving a debt unpaid. In pure panic, the minion stutters that the warrior will catch a massive penalty if he touches him. The empty trash talk, Yul speed blitzes and grabs the dude's face with insane grip strength. Close with a sub-zero glare, he says he's gonna drop one last tutorial before logging him off. All look, the MC warns that the only one owing a debt around here is the villain himself. Releasing an absolute nuke of energy, Yul deletes the guy taxing him for threatening his wife. Dropping his arm after the finisher, he clears the quest without a single ounce of guilt. In the woods, with a heavy aura, the dad notes hell have to fast travel to Sichuan to patch this bug himself. Cuts to a fancy pavilion in Sichuan, flexing how comfortably the enemy guild is living. Drinking with a bunch of girls, Tangoe smirks while hearing that his vibes are immaculate today. asks what's got him so hyped, and he decides to drop his little secret. Pouring another drink, the villain says he was checking out a flower and figured the hype would die down. Staring at his cup, he tries to play it innocent, claiming he just wanted the target for the lore. Thinking about Yul's wife, he admits he really just wanted her close so he could totally grief her life. Crushing an imaginary flower, he daydreams about what kind of tragic face she'd make and how funny it would be. Leaning back, the heir complains about not claiming her sooner, but he knows his master plan is bound to happen. Smiling like a psycho, he says he finally tracked her coordinates and thinks it's only fair to inflict some damage. When he brags about using an item to slowly drain her HP without leaving any aggro trails. Has totally unhinged, he randomly chokes the girl, cutting off her oxygen. Absolute cruelty, he forces her to say how bad the tick damage is, testing out what he plans for the couple. Luckily, a voice interrupts the torture session, saying the host is looking way too hyped. And white twin demons, two terrifying boomers, enter the chat complaining about the server time. Drops the girl, fixes his posture, and greets the two with major respect. Faking a laugh, the young master says he was waiting for the lobby to fill and suggests a toast for this epic day. He tells them to take a seat, wanting to talk about the late game and celebrate his promotion to guild leader. Though the heir sees these boomers as absolute trash who don't deserve a spot in his party, to him the old dudes are just gross tryhards who do anything for a few credits. His power by offering them seats Gowi believes no one will dare PvP him after today. Then he gets tilted, remembering when his half-brother tried to block his exit using their mom as an excuse. Jealousy, he accused the kid of trying to act superior and looking down on him. The young dude tried to be polite but got instantly hit with a shut up. Was Tang Mujin the most cracked prodigy the family ever rolled? Because of his massive talent pool, he hogged all the hype and attention from the admins. Go's rage spiked when their dad went AFK, and the prodigy acted like he owned the guild. Snapping back to the present, the villain skips the flashback and calls for a toast to his incoming W. The three raise their glasses and clink, locking in their alliance in that hidden zone. Like a maniac, the heir is already celebrating becoming the new top dog. Suddenly, a massive noise deletes the door, making him pull a face of pure shock. It's absolutely shredded, and the guards are yeeted into the room like paper weights. The crash terrifies the girls, and Gowi looks completely lost at the random raid. One of the mercenaries reads the room and calmly states the kid just got a surprise boss encounter. Furious, the host stands up, points a finger, and demands to know who has the absolute audacity to grief his base. Stepping out of the shadows, Yul adjusts his mask and says he knew they were trash but didn't realize they were this bad. Trying to keep his cool, the heir laughs sarcastically, assuming the intruder knows his high-tier status. With a killer glare, the warrior agrees and calls him the clan's only walking L. With his ego bruised, the villain spams curses while an old guy stands up, noting the kid picked a terrible day to log in. Boomer steps up, offering to unalive the kid as a celebration of their new team. Up to the MC, the two assassins act tough, saying they might spare his account if he begs on his knees. Zero fear, Yul just tilts his head and hard rejects the offer. Finding the disrespect hilarious, the giant laughs hard, guessing the intruder is actually speedrunning to the lobby. His heavy arm, the old guy spins an iron wrecking ball on a chain at insane RPM. Pushes at the exact same time, screaming they're going to break the cocky noob's hitbox. The heavy weapon rips through the air at the warrior, flexing the raw DPS of these two criminals. Iron ball flies directly at the warrior, with absolutely zero chill. Crushes the floor, spawning a massive dust cloud effect. From the heavy hit, the wooden floor shatters, completely wrecking the room's aesthetics. Yanking the chain back, a bald giant smirks, trolling how the kid managed to dodge. His bearded bro next to him agrees the parry was kinda neat. In a flash, the MC jumps with cracked agility to dodge the double team combo. Boomer's eyes go wide, seeing the target's impossible movement speed. Capitalizing on the air time window, Yul lands a perfect hit, announcing the first one is already down. Flattens the old man into the floor without a single frame to block. Knocked out cold, the merc just groans before his screen goes dark. Shook to the core, the other brother screams, while the MC lands cleanly on the wooden floor. With an ice-cold look, the young dude turns his head and says even monsters get tilted when it comes to family. Consumed by rage, the old guy grits his teeth, totally hijacked by pure hate. Unhinged, he spams his chain spin and throws massive toxicity at the intruder. Swears to tear the MC to shreds to avenge his duo partner. Of high-speed attacks fills the room with heavy glowing hitboxes. Calmness, Yul micro steps around the iron ball, dodging by literal pixels. Tilted from missing every shot, the assassin grits his teeth, desperate to land any hit. Roaring loudly, he keeps spamming his heavy attacks on the kid. Watching from the back, the heir can't compute how the veteran demon is whiffing every single skill shot. The old man's stats are high, but he freezes seeing the enemy perfect. Read every animation. Realizing the threat level is off the charts, the coward decides to tactically retreat ASAP. His escape gets cancelled when the MC catches the heavy weapon with just one hand mid-air. The old guy yanks the chain with everything he's got, but the weapon is totally bugged in place. The assassin realizes his stamina bar is empty and he just lost the 1-on-1, refusing to accept the mercenary questions how he got diffed by some random kid. Pulling the weapon, Yule says his fatal error was treating other players' accounts like garbage. Holding his ground, the warrior preps his finishing animation. Using the enemy's own iron ball, he yeets it back with brutal force. Zero reaction time, the merc tanks the devastating hit straight to the face. Pulls a face of pure horror as he realizes it's game over. The last demon drops heavy, permanently banning the assassin threat from the server. Cleared, the MC locks his edgy gaze onto the main boss. Trolling a bit, he apologizes for the queue time and focuses on the host. Is sweating bullets, having no clue how his elite bodyguards got wiped so fast. He realizes the intruder just handled legendary assassins like they were level 1 slimes. Master gulps, realizing he's up against an actual raid boss. He even desperately thinks the kid's power level ties with the Tang patriarchs. Trying to save his own skin, the villain asks how much gold the kid was paid, only getting a mumble back. He offers to double the credits to hire him, but the warrior treats the offer like a massive joke. Desperate, the heir holds up 3 fingers, swearing to drop any amount of loot to keep his account. A step forward, Yule reveals that he's actually the one who posted the bounty on him. His mind flashes back to the tragic cutscene of his wife suffering from the toxic debuff. Staring down the villain, the warrior says darkly that the guy ordering the hit is his future self. The intruder's AI broke, the heir finally connects the dots when he remembers the poison plot. The beautiful wife makes the coward realize this guy is the husband he absolutely despises. Stuttering, he asks for the intruder's gamertag and gets a yes to his fears. His fear flips into an insane laugh when he realizes the monster is just the broke scholar from the past. It's wild that a low-tier nobody managed to raid his base and do this much damage. Patience for the villain's emote spam, the warrior dash cancels right into his face. Right on cue, guards flood the zone asking for the future leader. Boxing the intruder in, they tell the young master to hit the escape route. Shoulder of the villain mutters that those guards are gonna get deleted in 5 seconds flat. Evil smirk pops up as the coward cooks up a super dirty strat. His poison, he decides to use his own squad as a meat shield. A completely toxic move, he drops his lethal area of effect right on the team trying to peel for him. The poison explodes purple across the room, filling the area with a deadly toxic cloud. Out of nowhere, the guards scream as the tick damage drains their HP bars. On the floor, a dying minion can't compute why his own boss friendly fired them. About the team kill, the young master laughs, bragging that no one survives his toxic build. His hype instantly dies when his eyes pop at something literally impossible. In the middle of the smoke, the MC is just standing there taking 0 damage, completely shielded by a golden aura. His arm hard, the warrior casts a pure wave to cleanse the arena's debuffs. Blast completely deletes the poison cloud, canceling the ultimate with a massive boom. Stripped of his secret weapon, the coward walks backwards in pure terror, realizing he's cornered. Walking over the ruined map, Yule sighs and sarcastically asks what that weak play even was. Disgusted, the guy declares the villain doesn't even deserve oxygen, telling him he should feel lucky. A flashback shows he personally logged off those boomers for their war crimes in the previous run. In the present, he says the heir would totally ignore those crimes just to rule the Sichuan server. Broken by fear, the villain drops to his knees, crying and begging to not get banned. His glowing fingers, Yule says he finally gets why the villain hated his wife so much. Zero mercy, he shoots energy beams that completely destroy the coward's critical hitboxes. The heir screams in agony as his internal code gets ripped apart as a penalty. The spam of attacks completely deletes the guy's ability to ever equip weapons again. The results, the MC's dark look proves he made the right call. Suddenly, a fast strike comes out of the fog of war, forcing him to block with his energy blade. Dude lands next to the downed villain, claiming the griefer went way too far. For the coward, the guy tells the MC that this is still the clan's top hair. For a chat reply, the masked guy charges up for a PvP duel. High, he hits a pixel, perfect attack animation. Massive wave tears through the room when the masked guy drops his skill. Movement, you'll barely side, steps the fatal hitbox. Narrows his eyes, downloading every frame of the opponent's combat style. Just a small dagger, he perfect. Parries the hit. Brawl speeds up with a furious combo exchange blades, sparking at ridiculous frame rates. The energy burst from the weapons clashing knocks both fighters back. The warrior slides on the broken floor, trying to reset his stance. Chill Yule stays standing in the middle of the wrecked lobby. The moveset belongs to Tang Mujin, the clan's absolute prodigy. In his head, he admits that even though he hates typical heroes, he respected this kid's stats in his past run. Flashback from his blood demon days shows the kid's wholesome vibes gave him one chill day. Thinks it's crazy ironic to run into the server's good boy in the middle of this chaotic raid. Alert, the MC readies up for the masked guy's next combo. Of stealth projectiles flies at him, making the warrior pull some sweaty dodges. Breath, Mujin can't believe the target is dodging everything in the final frames. Starts panicking, thinking the intruder is sandbagging and hiding his true power level. Masked guy goes for another aggro push. counters by casting green wind waves. An opening Yule super, jumps fully wrapped in his aura, dodges the area of effect lights blowing up the floor. From above the MC applies insane pressure with his dive attack. The prodigy crosses his arms just in time to tank the hit without taking full damage. Trying to turn the tables, he aims a strike right at Yule's chest. Yule casually spin, dodges ghosting through the enemy's blade like it's nothing. To wrap the combo, the warrior lands a heavy kick yeeting the masked dude across the room. Smirking, the MC confirms the kid's power scaling is exactly what he guessed. On the floor, Mujin gets tilted that he can't even scratch this monster's HP. Zero breathing room, Yule rushes in with his golden buff active. The cracked movement speed totally blinds the kid for a second. The prodigy directly making him yell out. The raw force crumples the masked guy backward with brutal knockback. Kid's guard is completely shattered and his weapons get deflected. Teleports like a ghost right behind him and puts him in a lock. On his neck, the prodigy knows his stun locked and takes the L. He tapped out. The warrior slowly lowers his weapon. Confused, the kid asks why he didn't just send him to the lobby. Walking around the zone, the MC coldly states he's not the one with the bounty. Wiped from the fight, the masked guy asks if the revenge quest is still active. Stopping, Yule points out the brother is already hard nerfed and the clan admins will review the logs. Says there's no need to farm the guy anymore, which totally freezes Mujin. His eyes go dark when he admits there's still one side quest left. Charging up his hand, he says he can't risk the villain ever grinding his stats back up. What's coming? The prodigy screams, begging him to cancel the animation, and the MC blasts a point-blank laser right into the downed air. The floorboards explode from the pure destructive physics of the impact. Mana core gets completely hardware, wiped by the energy. Screams in absolute agony as his account gets permanently bricked. Grabbing the victim's shoulders, Yule sarcastically says my bad to the brother while hard, locking his stat nodes. The villain passes out foaming at the mouth because the pain debuff was too heavy. Mujin shakingly asks if such a toxic play was really necessary. Zero regrets. The dad says yeah and mentions he just has one question for him. He calls out the prodigy's fake vibes, saying he was just pretending to block his brother's toxic griefing. States the kid never actually wanted to PvP his own clan, just playing the spectator role. The warrior concludes that watching his brother get nerfed is his penalty for being an enabler. Muted, the Tang family kid just sits in silence taking that massive reality check. Walks off, leaving the kid totally mind blown over what kind of raid boss just rolled through. The smoke clears in the Vipe zone, ending the night. The clan got wrecked by one brutal solo player. Speed, walking through the night mountains, the warrior heads back to his base. His promise to use this respawn only to carry his favorite people. Doubt creeps in as he replays the super toxic strat he just used. That to keep his wife from dropping out of the server, he had to play completely ruthless. Flashback of her taking poison damage convinces him the Sichuan raid was totally justified. Clenching his fists, he wonders what other quests he needs to clear to finally reach the chill endgame. On a perfect run for his home, he safely reaches his backyard. In the door slow, his wife wakes up in the dark, spotting his spawn in. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Yule says sorry for ruining her sleep schedule and asks for a quick chat. Soft smile, she says sure, gives the kid a head pat, and gets up. Step out into the lit garden for a private Discord call. Hugging herself against the cold, the wife admits this random late night meeting got her anxious. Her worried look meets his, showing she's legit stressing. The silence, Yule grabs her shoulders and drops the idea that they should server transfer back to Hebei. Stays super quiet while the cold wind hits the trees. Serious, the warrior admits dropping this lore right now must sound crazy. Totally caught off guard by the strat, the woman throws her hands back in pure shock. She asks, super confused, if they should actually fast travel back there. She repeats the zone's name, literally unable to process his dialogue. Grabbing her husband's arms, she says they can't, claiming her dad would never lift her ban for deserting. C secretly knows the guild master wouldn't unban her easily, but he calls her name gently. She argues her dad probably deleted her from his friend list and wonders how her husband can be so sure. Sad, she says she's just a walking L for the clan, and assumes the boss totally wiped her from his memory. Holding her hands softly, the guy whispers for her to just listen to his comms. He says he used to think that too, knowing the admin hated their co-op run past save file. He thought the old man would never forgive their rogue escape and marriage. The whole script flipped when his father-in-law spawned in the village right after she got logged off by poison. The hardcore leader completely broke down seeing his daughter's game over screen, crying his eyes out. A flashback shows the guild master crying heavily while hugging her downed avatar. He begged for forgiveness, taking the L and admitting his toxic greed caused the whole mess. For his grandkid, the old man pleaded to power level her at the clan base like top-tier loot. He rejected the invite, grabbing the kid and swearing head solo carry her. At the campfire of memories, the MC says he immediately regretted that trash strat. Squeezing his wife's hand, he says he promised no more bad dialogue choices in this run. Absolute resolve, Yule says they need the Peng clan's base defenses and buffs. The dad tells her to think about their kid asking if they could ever chill, without a solid safe zone. Staring at the floor super bummed out, the wife mumbles, weighed down by the guilt debuff. Closer, the guy admits his father. Law is probably tilted, but says there's more to the lore. Bringing her hand to his chest, the husband promises every dad actually has an unbreakable bond. In the feels by his sweet talk, she looks up and fully downloads the advice. Trying to boost her mood, Yule jokes that the boomer doesn't even view him as a party member anyway, making her laugh. Her tight, the warrior, tells her to trust his shot, saying it'll all be a W. Under the moon lighting up the quiet village, they lock in the decision to migrate the squad back to the clan. In nice and chill, with Happy Bird audio playing over the starter houses, Cheeks Soil blows some wet ink onto a brush with absolute gamer focus, carefully slides the ink bottle closer so they don't trigger any wake up events. Teaming up, the mom helps the kid troll by scribbling on the sleeping guy's face. Slowly, the warrior opens one eye, noticing the sketchy activity. He asks what they're doing, and the wife hides the brush capping with a goofy smile. Pushing her hubby's back, she tells him to get up for some top-tier breakfast loot. His face covered in ink, he sits on the floor, saying he slept great since they're moving back to Hebei. The table is stacked with consumables, and the wife says she cooked all the remaining inventory. Trying not to laugh, the duo holds their breath when the husband sits down, finding their vibes super sus. The mom breaks, seeing the custom skin on his face, and tells him to go wash up, admitting they trolled him. Steps out, the two burst into a super wholesome duo laugh. Washing his face outside, Yule sees the black water, gets the joke, and hears the kid say sorry. The sunny, chill weather floods the starter village on the first day of heavy goodbyes. NPCs are totally shocked the teacher is logging out of the zone so soon. MC apologizes for the rush, while an old lady asks why they can't stick around. Village elder scratches his head, agreeing, and mentions the zone is safe, without the bandits. A sweet smile, the leader says everyone loved them there, and wishes them a safe, fast travel. Touching his daughter, the dad encourages the little one to emote goodbye to the nice NPCs. Super cute Soil bows and happily waves bye to the crowd in the square. The squad starts walking, leaving the village, and taking in the warm smiles of the locals. Getting further away, the warrior quietly thinks those days there were the absolute peak of his old playthrough. His wife and kids' hands, he swears he'll sprint back if the village ever needs a carry. The epic sunset over the village closes out this peaceful chapter to kick off the new main quest. Far away, the massive dark fort of the Peng clan is having a sweaty meeting about the alliance's demands. Table, an advisor, says the clan should bow down to randoms from outside the server. Out of patience for the long chat, the boss slams the table, telling them to shut their mouths. Looking terrifying, Peng Mugen glares at his son and tells him to drop his take on the issue. Seo Jin politely says they should accept it since moderating outsiders is literally their job. A boomer advisor claps back, thinking it'll cause lag later, but the kid says that's exactly why they have to do it. The heir explains that accepting the right quest stops the alliance from using it as leverage in the late game. Son's high IQ answer, the patriarch hypes up the kid's global game sense. An older guy in the corner notes the kid's flawless vibe and sees he was born to run the guild. Lee blasts open as an exhausted messenger face. Plants announcing a code red, orders him to spill it, and the minion stutters in pure panic before dropping the lore. Mustering some courage, the servant gulps and drops the missing daughter's name, shaking the young master. Lily goes dead silent when the minion announces Miss Peng Seo. Yeon just spawned back in. Crushing the armrest with insane grip strength, the patriarch feels the massive critical hit of that news in his chest. And in pure disbelief, the leader stands up, glaring at the servant and demanding he repeat the game Erdig. Same time over at the Tang clan's base, the vibe in the VIP room is insanely tense. Covered in battle scars, talks coldly about his cowardly son throwing the game so hard. Dressed in commander gear, Tang Jin Wu takes the L for not training the kid right. Pacing around, he says he only logged back in because someone bricked his kid, laughing at how crazy the raid was. A minion mentions the trackers are hunting, but the boss cuts him off, reminding him the guy wiped legends. Sly Fox Look, the leader, states that hunting this raid boss using basic strats is a massive throw. Back at the enemy base, the minion asks if the boss is going to do anything about the base raid. Walking with his hands behind his back, Tang Jin Wu says they always collect their debts, good or bad. He decides the guild needs to learn some basic meta etiquette before pushing for anything else. Cutting back to the Peng fort, the door opens, showing the guests are already in the lobby. Yule, his wife, yawn, and the kid wait nervously on the fancy couches of the estate. The woman's eyes go wide when someone walks in, calling her name. Seojin greets his sister, formally wanting to check her status screen. Overflowing with hype, calls her brother's name and rushes over. Share a massive hug with her, noting his level up while he guesses She's been living well. MC Seojin acts respectful, calls him brother-in-law, and asks if his HP is full. Chat, the young dude looks down and spots a tiny kid standing right there. Jump, scared by the cuteness, and Yeon happily introduces her as his niece. Little Soil takes a second before calling him uncle in the most adorable way possible. Sweet audio Seojin gets totally stunned, locked by her wholesome vibes. Critical hit, the guy shyly asks to hold the kid, which Yeon instantly greenlights. Gets super emotional when the matriarch Manhwa Young runs in screaming for her daughter. Yeon goes mute seeing her mom squeeze her tight, asking what happened to her rogue kid. Hard from regret, the woman apologizes to her mom for going AFK out of nowhere. Her uncle's arms Soil gets confused and innocently asks why her mom is leaking water. Tears keep the kid chill. Yeon tries to play it cool, while her mom notices the mini player. The mom tells the little one to emote at grandma, and the older lady gets totally hooked on the tiny kid. Super sweet, the lady gives the grandkid tear head pat. She says the kid is an exact clone of her daughter back in the tutorial days. Then her radar locks onto the girl's husband, who is chilling in the background shadows. Knowing it's his turn for the boss fight, Yul steps into the light. Respectfully, the MC asks for forgiveness for the massive lag and tanks all the aggro himself. The wife jumps in to peel that heavy debuff off her husband. In-law pulls a wild card, sighing and saying they went rogue on purpose because of love. Super chill, the lady tells him to rest up from the grind, earning a really genuine thank you. The good vibes instantly crash when a booming voice announces there won't be any friendly lobbies here. Massive boss Aura Mugang, the head admin of the family, walks in looking furious. Without even flinching, the warrior looks him in the eye and calls him father-in-law. Ignoring Yul, the boomer trashes the kid, mocking if that broke default skin is all he has left after the escape. Yeon tanks for her hubby, stepping up and asking what his actual problem is. Lee says she traded the guild's pay to win life to grind her own account from scratch and dealt with the bugs. And even through the lag, she loved every frame of being free and playing her way. Rejects her patch notes and yells, accusing his daughter of acting innocent while trashing his choices. The clan became a server-wide meme because of her rage, quitting while the mom tries to de-escalate. Telling his wife to mute herself, the boomer pressures the girl, demanding the real lore behind her return. Tired of the toxicity, the matriarch drops an absolute nuke of rage on the entire room. Leader swallows his ego and physically steps back, spooked by his wife's massive power spike. His gear, she roasts him hard, asking why his spamming fake news and lying. She drops the lore that he spent months crying over his kid in her room, making the couple cringe while Yul coughs. By the live drama, Yeon blushes and begs them to stop the screaming match. Trying to reset the aggro, the old man plays dumb and asks about this grandkid side quest. Taking the opening, the uncle turns the kid to the boomer and tells her to drop a greeting. Being ridiculously wholesome, Soil turns her cute face and says grandpa in the most precious voice ever. Boss takes a fatal critical hit straight to the heart, seeing that adorable little NPC. Defeated by the kid's charm, he steps back with his jaw dropped, asking what kind of magical item this is. Cuteness combo continues as she calls him grandpa again, completely shattering the old man's tough guy armor. The wife notices her hubby wants to hold the kid and calls it out, making him fake cuff to hide it. Lord Act vanishes fast as he scoops up the kid, swinging her around, completely hyped, entertaining the whole lobby. The Peng clan base is dead silent and super chill in the VIP quarters. Private room, Yul and the boomer are having a one-on-one chat. Sipping his drink, the leader tells the kid to just accept whatever he says without fighting back. He brings up the day of his daughter's love confession, feeling bad for her low IQ play. In his head, the leader admits he never thought she'd actually drop her guild tag for some random player. Reviewing the old logs, he warns he was planning to force her back no matter what, but remembering Yeon's glowing face when she was with him, the dad admits had never seen her emote that happily. His cup down, he reveals he just wished her a GG and never actually expected them to respawn here. His pride, Yul bows deep and says he wanted to legit clear the bad blood with the leader. Sus, the old guy asks if the kid is having regrets, but the warrior hard denies it. Solid and chill, the MC declares his wife and kid are his whole server and head replay it the exact same way. Not following the logic, the leader asks why his apologizing, hearing it's for the messy drama of their selfish return. Says the daughter deserved her guild back, while the leader scans Yul's massive physical upgrades. Flexing his resolve, Yul swears he'll carry his family and begs the admin to unban them. Closing one eye, the old man wonders how the squishy nerd from before farmed this much confidence. Trying to keep his tough guy skin, the leader grunts to hide the massive respect he just gained for the kid. He thinks letting them stay is the easy part. The real challenge is them surviving the hardcore clan grind. With authority, Mugang gives them the green light to use the fort as their safe zone. Yul drops a relieved thank you, but the boomer warns the clan members are gonna grief a scholar trying to join the ranks. Overflowing with confidence, the kid embraces the hard mode, saying he'd gladly tank some hits. The next day drops sunny weather over the massive Peng estate in the Green Hills of the map. A cave marks the spot where the daily grind sessions just started. Slash marks wrecked tree stumps prove the hardcore routine is already live. Sitting solo in the cave, Yul channels an insane glowing buff through his avatar. His eyes, he notes it's been 30 days since they traveled back to Hebei. His gear, the warrior, is hyped to see his stats are already passing his old save file, decides it's not the right patch to reveal his true DPS to the clan members yet. Staring at the massive castle on the peak, he promises to keep grinding so he can carry his beloved squad. Cutting to the dirt courtyard, a bunch of fighters are sweating through martial arts drills. Watching that, a soldier complains about the annoying scholar brother-in-law always walking around with a smug emote. Squad's up cooking a toxic strat to grief the new guy. The sketchy huddle captain No Ill Bong asks if they're crying about Yule again. The soldiers confirm it, getting tilted and asking for an event to prove randoms have zero value here. Taking the bait, the captain thinks they should drop some classic clan-style PvP on him. Down the path, Yule is just chilling, enjoying the good weather around the main hub. Masking his toxicity, the captain tells him to come run with the heavyweights to blow off steam from reading. The trolls secretly pray. He accepts, hoping the kid's stamina hits zero and he passes out during their marathon. To the griefing, Yule happily clicks accept and agrees to queue up early morning. Husband drops a wave and turns to walk down the alleys. Staying behind, the captain drops an evil smirk, knowing the run is going to be absolute nightmare difficulty. Missing their toxic vibes, the MC strolls toward the main gates. And early, the warriors are grouped up betting the noob rage. Quit out of fear, arms crossed. Ilg Bong says dodging the queue will get him penalized for stealing the clan's lady. He asks what happens if he doesn't show, but a soldier pings that Yule just spawned in. Losing his usual chill vibe, Yule walks up to the circle of guys in the dirt. Sweetly asks if he missed the ready check and gets a short reply that he's right on time. Noticing new skins, the kid asks who they are and finds out the captains are running a stamina stress test on everyone. Sure that he's about to break the nerd, Ill Bong yells to start the event. The squad forms a straight line fast and the boss sets a sweaty pace, expecting the kid to drop dead. Run in sync across the yard, keeping a relentless tempo. Ripping off their sweaty shirts, they crank up the speed to completely filter out the casuals. The pack, the captain sighed. Eyes to check on the tragic state the kid should be in. Sees Yule hasn't lost a single point of stamina, realizing the guy's endurance stats are hacked. The drill leader drops a fake smile, trusting that the flat ground is the tutorial and the mountain phase will wipe him. Path leads up a brutal cliff that drains the stamina bar of even veteran players. Pushing up the trail, the buff dudes are already gasping for air, leaking sweat from the heavy debuff. Pace drains the squad's energy, making the weaker ones cry for a pause menu. The massive plot twist, Yule casually walks past the struggling players like they're nothing, leaving everyone terrified. He strolls up the cliff like it's a casual base tour, making everyone question the nerd's supposedly low stats. Drenched in sweat, the captain's eyes bug out, seeing the random reach the top of his own squad. Tilted, his brain blue screen, seeing the guy breathing normally right next to him. Finishing the death march, they return to the fort's flat ground, but the guy demands they stop immediately. Furious that his grief failed, Ill Bong ignores the practically dead players and orders a full replay of the event. The squad goes into massive panic mode over the insane order, while the leader curses the target's hacked lung capacity. Start the run again, and the exhaustion spreads through the queue, making soldiers disconnect and drop his entire stamina bar. Even the boss starts throwing up, unable to keep his alpha posture. The yard looks like a wipe screen, with guys dragging on the floor begging for the toxic penalty to end. Clean and fresh, Yule just complains the event was too short and tells everyone to queue up again tomorrow. Players peek at the guy's back as he walks away, feeling absolute terror. Keeping his word, Yule actually logs in bright and early with the same hacked stamina the very next day. After that, cutscenes of the guy casually jogging while leading a squad of dying players became the daily meta at the clan. The issue was him demanding a nightmare pace from the warriors every single day, forcing them to beg for a nerf. MC denies it with an edgy laugh, and his rep as a terrifying psycho levels up in the fort. The next day, Yeon notices Yule has extra muscle definition and unlimited stamina lately. Soil happily chews her sweets. The guy covers it up, capping that he runs side quests in secret. Into the wind, the hero admits coming back was a bad call, and he's actually enjoying the map. The low-tier NPCs are spamming fake news about him. He pardons them and ignores the toxic chat. Flashback hits of his miserable past playthrough full of edgy loneliness and zero party members. To dinner, the current zone feels like a literal paradise compared to his awful solo past. The evening sun paints the Hebei square, signaling the server reset for the local shops. In the city, the street vendors hype up young Seojin, thanking him for keeping the base walls secure. And Classy, the kid swears, has just doing his daily quests to keep them safe. NPCs drop positive emotes for his fast travel back home. Road, at night, the prodigy chats with a minion refusing to go AFK in the small town. The kid mentions his guild duties and how hyped he is to see his wholesome niece back at base. Suddenly, the kid cancels his walk animation, sensing a massive spike in enemy aggro. Audio cue of a footstep on a leaf breaks the chill night vibes in the dark woods. Out of nowhere, masked players start spamming projectiles at the kid's squad from the tree line. Drawing his blade fast, the air toggles his defensive stance, scanning the enemy's zone control. splatters the road as the clan guards take heavy tick damage from the hyper-fast assassin blades. Sword strikes, the kid orders his right-hand man to dash out and pull a tactical retreat. Following the boss call, the guard tears through the brush, desperate to ping for backup. Through the fight, the prodigy takes a massive critical hit to the body and curses the game's RNG for this trash ambush. Cut off, the guard sprints with 0 stamina left up the massive stairs leading to the clan's main hub. Griefers push their speed stats, hunting him, flexing their guaranteed kill rate. Tanking the debuff, Seojin spots the dirty chase and his heart drops for his bleeding minion. The thug launches himself through the air, aiming his blades right for the running sentry's critical spots. The Griefer's luck runs out mid-air over the bridge when Yule intercepts the squad, dropping an icy warning about the massive mistake they made in his safe zone. Turns to absolute chaos with Seojin looking for glitchy escape routes after checking his severely nerfed HP bar. At the empty pit, the kid realizes his normal escape path is completely blocked by the armed mobs. Gripping his weapon tight, he calculates if pulling an insane strat is worth the risk right now. Running out of frames, the prodigy yeets himself off the cliff, betting on fall damage over getting captured by the enemy guild. Spooked by the wild play, the bandits line up at the edge, mind blown that he actually jumped into the void. Tilted over, losing the bounty, the minion aims into the dark pit, completely whiffing his shot. Falling like a rock toward the forest floor, the kid registers the damage and screams as the fatal hit shatters his character model. The death animation, he sighs, accepting the crazy escape, knowing his IQ play saved him from getting farmed by cheap mercs. Seconds later, the tragedy hits the main hub with blood-soaked gear delivered by shop NPCs claiming the routes are blocked and players are downed. In a sweaty guild meeting, the elder screams, completely tilted, that the heir got deleted in the woods, demanding instant bans for the assassins. Is chaotic, with people debating logs, but they cope by hoping the kid survived a night hiding in some random cave. Telling the chat to mute, one of the front members demands they stop the spam and focus on actual intel for the rescue quest. Taking control of the server, the head admin Mugang ends the useless chat, assigning every single fighter to sweep the woods for the young master. Clueless to the massive drama, the nerd's wife rubs his back, asking him to log off for the night, but he focuses his energy on her stress debuff. His buffed avatar, the girl Trauma, dumps her fears about the kid's blood found in the dark mountain alleys. His hand through her hair, he transfers chill vibes while his brain speed runs through razor sharp logs from his past playthrough. The math, he checks the server time and pinpoints the exact frame this mystery disappearance happened in the lore. He remembers perfectly that this event terrified the whole map back then, with leaks spreading to rival guilds about a top tier getting permanently bricked. He recalls the kid spawning back with a chopped arm, locking in a permanent trauma debuff for the family after the brutal griefing from that trash mob. Respecting his past logs, he acknowledges the kid's high honor stats and remembers the buffs he got from him before all the toxic players ruined everything. Fueled by that past respect, he locks in a solo quest to defend the kid's drop spot, saving his limbs and pulling him out of the toxic merc's hellish stunlock. Swaps to a gross cave where the mob boss is raging, asking if a player actually survived that fatal fall damage from the cliff. Tier Thug admits they fumbled the kill, hyping up the prodigy's cracked mechanics and flying sword skills. In a toxic rage, the boss warns of a brutal ban demanding the exact loot they promised in the black market without missing a single credit for the messy forest raid. Shot Caller reminds them that squads get completely wiped if they randomly aggro the 5 major factions of the server without a plan. Smoking a heavy buff item, he says he's paying top dollar for clean kills or flawless runs on the end of their spears. At the premium currency, the hitman promises to fast travel back with the sliced loot to keep the corrupt VP happy. Fast as the wind, his cape glitches through the air over the fancy roofs in the dead of night, hunting for quests. The safe zone to scan the rural rock textures, the assassin tracks the blood trail, finding the optimal path through the dark woods to locate the downed prodigy, who took massive fall damage while trying to escape the elite army of the righteous martial sect. Massive rocks, the arena looks like a nightmare lobby, with thugs cornering the battered heir, offering a trash surrender deal before they delete his account in the cursed Bloody Valley at the end of his bone-breaking fall from the old bridge. Low stamina, the clan kid tries to stand on a broken leg, getting trolled by an arrogant opponent who has 0 honor for a guy nerfed by a desperate suicide jump into the dark abyss. The forest thug readies his weapon, confident no admins will spawn here, betting everything on the clan being clueless about the kid's critical condition. His camera to his boss, he looks for the green light to finish the quest and end the PvP match. The thumbs up from the head assassin to pull the plug, the villain locks his aim on the vulnerable low HP target in the dirty corner. Walking toward the kill zone, he kicks away the panicked prodigy's warnings to back off. As the weapon swings, Yule tears through the zone flash, stepping to intercept the toxic blade in literal frames. And chill, the great Yule drops some friendly dialogue, claiming he only spawned here to peel the aggro and clear this absurd hazard. The warrior injects magical mana into the kid's nodes, spectacularly healing the busted arm of the downed player in that dark pit with his massive glowing golden buffs. Tier mechanics lock out the pain debuffs, stopping the bleed damage, and pulling the target back from a game over using hidden mystic arts. Effects wrap the bleeding arm, pausing the HP drain, and leaving the kid totally shook by the random god. Tier healing in this hopeless abyss. Spotting a purple poison debuff on his spine, the brother-in-law tells him to go AFK and heal while he solo clears the trash mobs. Yule counts on his fingers, tallying the enemy squad, dropping massive doubt into the toxic players, heads with his casual math. It's a massive raid group. He hypes up his relative, praising his mental stats for tanking this hellish fight and enduring the brutal damage. Furious at the noob's audacity to interrupt the match, the minion screams absolute nonsense, trying to dig a grave for the surprise guest who just jumped in with a heavy yellow aura, terrifying the criminals who aren't used to seeing a chill scholar staring down wild killers. Scanning the map with crossed arms, the leader whispers curses at the intruder, trying to calculate his hacked power level. The voice chat threats Yule just rests his hand on his hilt, standing completely frozen against their aggro. Frame later, a tsunami level energy wave completely fries the darkness, lighting up the night forest like a blinding solar flare. Smirk's screen flashes red as he realizes they just hit a fatal fail state for trash, talking a literal god. Tier boss hiding in a default skin. Magical wind crushes the enemy, juggling the target like a ragdoll in a terrifying razor sharp tornado that deletes the terrain. The massive impact shatters the floor textures, crushing rocks and completely shredding the green forest map. Horrifying death audio echoes from the wiped squad after the invisible massive area of effect strike lands. Storms absolutely shred the arena with zero mercy, easily securing the MVP spot for the stranger in this solo wipe. Results show a total catastrophe, instantly deleting the bandits and proving the tutorial is over. Standing clean in the gross ash, the boss knees lock up, seeing his elite squad hit the floor, turns into a pure destruction sandbox, opening massive craters in the previously untouched forest map. The injured kid on the ground blue screams, mind blown that his relative just one-shot an elite team without even burning stamina. Goes fully static too, guessing the intruder is some monster race who cast broken spells to wipe his top-tier guild in seconds. Who, overcome with absolute panic, the last surviving minion drops his loot, begging in the chat for a chance to talk his way out of a ban from the Grim Reaper. Chattering his teeth, the villain tries to spam crying emotes, begging for a diplomatic out before the fatal finisher connects. The pardon gets hard, rejected, and he takes a full lightning combo, completely wiping his guild's run without an ounce of mercy from the Dark Warrior. As the last man standing face to face with the raid boss, he leaks cold sweat, knowing a brutal game over is about to hit his zero support avatar in this dark arena. Brain completely lags, seeing his duo partners get tapped by a bizarre unreactable ultimate. Suddenly a massive claw grabs the minion's throat from behind as Mugang's roar blames the gang for cowardly breaking into their server for gold. The boss freezes in pure terror, feeling the monster grab his neck while noticing Yule chilling in the trees like a stealth camper watching the patriarch's rage. Pure aggro into his veins, the boomer snaps the guy's bones, demanding the penalty fee from the weak merc who dared test the ancient overpowered Marshall Mountains. Staying completely FK in stealth, the hero freaks out, internally cursing his RNG that the dad spawned in at the absolute worst frame of the cutscene. MC connects the dots, realizing in his old save he only survived because the leader clipped through the floor to save him at the last second. The tension spikes because Yule is calculating how to stealth crawl out of there to dodge a ban from the father-in-law who has insane tracking stats. Dodging the admin's radar, the hero taps his temple and casts a sleep spell on the kid so the stealth strat works smoothly without anyone catching his escape. Spotting his downed son, the boomer drops the trash mob and zooms over like a jet, screaming that has arrived at the hazard zone. The boomer's dash shatters the ground, leaving the newly freed villain totally confused in the gross dirt of the dark abyss, where his squad just got wiped. Zero tolerance for trash loot, the fort giant fires a massive energy blast fueled by Mac's family vengeance. Eyes widen in his final frames, realizing his game over was caused by griefing the immortal god. Tier veterans. Hits the boss like a nuke, deleting any chance of him escaping the divine strike without a shattered character model. From stealth, the masked guy sighs in relief, knowing if he was under-leveled he'd be dust from the alpha's attack. High ground, the hero acknowledges the sword's raw DPS, realizing it's the actual core of the big boss hype. Striking a massive alpha pose, the Supreme Master cues up a furious sprint to farm the crawling worms. Power effects pop off in the abyss as the boomer unleashes blind destructive rage to protect his bloodline from the toxic mercs. Furious over his family taking damage, the boomer drops dirty curses, leaving cracks in the floor from his ruthless heavy attacks. Powering up laser blades, the boss coldly calculates how long the villain's brain and vocal cords can survive the torture. Spooked by the extreme damage output, the guy tries to sidestep, terrified of fighting the enraged giant while cornered. At the creep with pure hate, the old man swears to slice the dirty criminal's avatar in one fatal hit. Camouflaged in the brush, Yule breaks down the lethal straight punch aimed at the ugly villain's chest, a strike that bends the game's physics. Rush boils the earth, digging a colossal trench and deleting the grass as the blue light sword slashes through. Carried by the wind physics, the bandit flies back in pure shock over the supreme art unleashed by the buffed boomer. Crashing into the rocks, the villain admits internally his HP would hit 0 if he tried to tank that god tier hit. Giant shadow drops on his neck, jump, scaring him as the heavy aggressive boss teleports right in his face before he can even input a dodge. Locked into his finisher, the leader drops a hard warning to the noob, yelling a motto to never disrespect the ruthless Peng Fort. And perfect, the blade slices the wind-cutting mountains with a hellish explosion that deals massive AoE death. Trapped in absolute phobia of the wipe, the masked guy's nerves freeze as he watches his screen about to go permanently dark. Staring at the void, he grips his weapon in pain, praying to break out of the stun lock before his hitboxes completely shatter. Swallows the dude's brain as he sees the scythe dropping to finalize his run. One final desperate parry input, he spins his blade, blocking the instant kill strike of hitboxes, kicks up a sandstorm, tossing debris into the sky and shaking the entire peaceful server with a deafening audio glitch. As the fog clears, the leader steps forward, pinging his suspicion about the enemy's hacked block stats. In a magic shield, the merc leader's stamina drops from the heavy recoil. Scanning the enemy stat sheet, the leader nods at the energy level, recognizing a player who can parry heavy attacks in high-tier PvP. By the weird matchmaking, the Grandmaster screams, asking why a high-stat player is doing low-level griefing quests. The guy grabs his wound, screaming in toxic pain, spamming curses at the veteran monster. Accepting his game over, the merc decides not to leak any lore, choosing to log off without typing in chat. Overcome with impatience, the patriarch makes his sword gleam even brighter and announces that he will put an end to this waste of time once and for all. However, a weak voice from behind causes the old man to stop his advance immediately. Himself, with considerable effort, young Seojin appears at the scene and seeks to clarify the entire context to his father. With difficulty, the injured successor warns that the focus of the old man's fury is precisely the individual who rescued him from the other criminals. Processing the news, Mugang freezes and quickly realizes he is about to make a disastrous mistake. Thrown to the ground, the mercenary observes the wounds on his own henchman and confirms the truth of what the young master said. The antagonist is filled with terror as he gauges the immense power of the enigmatic figure who annihilated his entire troop without help. Desperately, the patriarch holds his wounded son and questions him about his condition after facing such a risk. At that moment, the old man turned his face abruptly upon noticing that the criminal had suddenly disappeared. Using the distraction caused by the family's commotion, the criminal escapes using a skill of rapid movement and expresses ironic gratitude for the unplanned mercy. Despite his irritation at the escape, Mugang acknowledges his opponent's formidable skill and questions himself about the nature of this threatening individual. Analyzing the grave condition of the son illuminated by the moonlight, the chief determines that the most urgent priority at the moment is to return to the shelter of the fortress. Hidden in the dark woods, the protagonist observes the end of the event, feeling great satisfaction with the success of his strategy. Subtly, Yule leaps across the chasm in order to resolve the final stage of that tumult, far from the sight of his family. Distance from that place, a heavy burden hangs from a tree branch, moving according to the despair of the person trapped inside. Positioned on the upper branch, the fighter hears the muffled noises of the hostage, who is struggling to escape the trap. And with his mouth gagged in a humiliating manner, the real perpetrator of the attack suffers in reverse in the darkness of the woods. The robust man struggles in terror, unable to comprehend how he ended up in that frightening scene. Speaking with a voice trembling with fear, the individual sheds tears, stating that he was only resting peacefully in his room, and inquires about the reason for all of this. Ignoring the cries, Yule coldly asks if the captive has many possessions, warning that he has the option of giving up whatever he wants to obtain mercy. Fearing for his own survival, the wealthy man proposes to hand over his entire fortune, immediately prompting the fighter to demand to know where the riches are kept. Settled serenely in the tree, the main character listens as the man promises to reveal each of his secrets. The prisoner's weight causes dangerous snapping in the rope as he pleads for release so he can lead the young man to the riches. Observing the worn cable, Yule notes without emotion that the branch does not appear to have the strength to support itself for an extended period. The atmosphere becomes tense the moment the patriarch declares that he spent the entire journey plotting a way to avenge the suffering inflicted on his brother-in-law, which leaves the principal bewildered regarding the mention of the Peng family. A cruel indifference, Yule announces that the time is up for the hired thugs and reveals that the successor is still alive and with his arm intact. Hanging upside down, the man's eyes widen, completely disoriented by this talk of a modified future and a circumvented fate. Next, the fighter reveals who the scoundrel in front of him really is, naming him the master of the Golden Pavilion and blaming him for using financial resources to fund cruelties. Disturbing scene unfolds, revealing the atrocities committed by the merchant against innocent individuals with the sole aim of expanding his business. Any empathy, the protagonist condemns the subject for oppressing the vulnerable in order to satisfy himself, pondering which punishment would bring more pain to such a despicable person. Overcome with utter panic, the hostage yells, blaming the young man for not keeping his word and for playing dirty. His enemy, with disdain, Yule determines that the worst punishment is to finish him off right then. And they're trembling with terror and unable to use any of his possessions. The sharp sound of the blade echoed through the room, breaking the rope that held the prisoner. Falling vertically through the darkness, the merchant cries out for help, begging not to be left behind, snaps, completely sealing the fate of the cowardly leader at the bottom of the abyss. The following morning dawns sunny and calm over the vast buildings of the Peng family estate. Resting comfortably in a warm bed, the talented young man begins a slow awakening from his revitalizing rest. As soon as she opens her eyes, Seojin sees all her relatives gathered around her, with her sister checking on her health and her niece affectionately calling out to her uncle. Rising from his bed supported by his family, the successor anxiously inquires about everyone's well-being after the terror of the previous night. Quickly his head is filled with confused memories of the battle in the woods against the group of masked mercenaries. The memory of the unknown fighter who rescued his life returns to his mind, recalling the unbelievable power he witnessed. Still somewhat disoriented, he audibly questions whether he actually succeeded in returning home alive. By her brother's improvement, Yeon embraces the boy tightly and notes that he has caused immense distress to the entire family. The young heir smiles slightly and shows gratitude for his sister's love, experiencing the comfort of feeling safe again. Moment his gaze shifts and falls upon the silhouette of his brother, in law parked nearby, witnessing the family moment. A sudden memory invades his mind, bringing to mind the penetrating vision and pose of the hooded hero in the woods. Noticing his sister's husband standing there with that exact carefree posture, a peculiar feeling of familiarity takes hold of the young talent's mind. Noticing her brother's sudden inattention, the young woman asks if he is suffering from any physical pain and offers to seek medical help immediately. Shaking her head in disapproval, Seojin assures her that her condition is already much better and asks her not to worry unnecessarily. Dispels the doubt with a restrained laugh, judging it utter madness to imagine that the quiet intellectual and the monstrous warrior are the same person. After the young talent's safe return, Yule walks calmly through the fortress grounds. At that moment, a local merchant chooses to go to the clan to admit the full truth of what happened that night. The subject prostrates himself, begging for mercy, explaining that the owner of the Golden Pavilion ordered the insertion of a tracking incense into Seojin's clothing. However, upon inspecting the principal's premises, the Peng family members encountered a huge unforeseen problem. Majestic Golden Pavilion was completely reduced to ashes during an enigmatic incident. To top it all off, the owner of the establishment got completely flustered and met a fatal end in the abyss, losing all his possessions. Unable to identify the perpetrator of that ruin, the imposing patriarch and his son merely discuss the matter, seek to recover the identity of the masked figure who protected the heir in the woods, speculating about his current whereabouts. The main character relaxes, peacefully leaning against a wooden walkway, contemplating the flow of water. Gazing at her son-in-law from a distance, the female head of the family appears quite thoughtful about what awaits the young man in that environment. Sometime later, she speaks with her husband in a private room and advises him to delegate a mission to the man from outside. By the unexpected idea, Mugang crosses his arms and asks what exactly his wife is referring to, hearing that the topic is their son-in-law. Taking the suggestion as a pointless joke, the patriarch lets out a loud laugh and scoffs, saying that the boy is nothing more than a useless idle dependent. Maintaining a serious tone, the lady takes a sip of tea and argues that the role of an older member is precisely to guide the younger ones, even without relinquishing a prominent position. In order to finally persuade her husband, she suggests that he give the young man a job that everyone rejects, and that is quite uncomfortable. Understanding the strategy clearly, the old man displays a wry smile as the matriarch asks if he has already come up with something. Excited about the chance to create difficulties, the patriarch confirms that he has the ideal plan for the situation. Letting out a laugh laden with malice, he assures his wife that he will fulfill her wish, recalling that a certain faction of troublemakers must be returning from their punishment at this very moment. Away from the fortress, a devastated landscape dominates the dirt road, where a merchant cries out for his own survival. Completely terrified and wounded, the man sheds tears, swearing that he has already given up all his possessions, but he hears a shout ordering him to stop lying. The criminal leader raises a colossal axe, demanding the hidden fortune of the Golden Pavilion, silencing the prisoner, who tries to justify that the place is completely bankrupt. Unable to extort any more money, the gigantic man decides to sell all those who remain alive into slavery, while his subordinates immobilize a woman. Suddenly, several silhouettes leap from the tops of the foliage, alerting the bandits to prepare for the worst. Commander of the looters turns his face away, completely disoriented by the abrupt breakdown of his criminal scheme. A sharp, fierce countenance emerges from the darkness, signaling the arrival of individuals prepared for combat. Several robust and imposing fighters surround the perimeter, signaling the return of that troublesome faction the Patriarch had mentioned. Panic questioning the identity of those men, while one of them tries to stammer orders to expel those who have just arrived. A step forward with extreme confidence, the commander of the fierce team murmurs that those thugs talk too much. In a fraction of a second, the newcomers fire at the assailants, creating a veritable blur of agility in the conflict zone. Sporting a cheerful grin and sharp teeth, one of the fighters connects with a devastating attack on one of the opponents. The young man with spiky hair grumbles that crowds of people are making too much noise and rushes in with full force to silence the troublemakers. By the attack, the leader of the criminal group orders his henchmen not to retreat, emphasizing their numerical superiority. The burly man swings his sturdy axe in an attempt to strike the invaders by any means necessary. Easily dodging, one of the fighters calmly mentions that the battle is too simple and that the enemies lack strength. Team leader asks his teammate not to get angry over trivial matters and orders the rest of the troop to slow down so as not to terrorize innocent people. Bringing the captured woman closer, he notices the desperate criminal pressing a blade against her throat. Shaking with fear, the criminal warns that he will hurt the girl if the team does not allow him to escape alive from the scene. However, before he could finish intimidating the villain, he received a devastating punch right in the center of his face. Due to the absurd force of the blow, the troublemaker is thrown far away and frees the civilian instantly. Landing lightly on the ground supported by his stick, the other fighter mocks the ridiculous behavior of his defeated opponent. Pleased with the resolution of the problem, the commander cracks his neck and congratulates the group on their excellent performance in quickly solving the case. He turns his attention to the civilians with the intention of warning them that they are protected, but finds them all kneeling and pleading for their lives. The young man is completely bewildered by the terrified posture of those victims. Finding the scene amusing, the brute with the stick lightly pats the leader on the back, joking that they appear to be more delinquent than the original thugs. Seeking to ease the tension, the leader bends down, assuring the merchants that it is all just a huge misunderstanding and that they are good people. At the White Wolf insignia sewn onto their clothing, the merchant immediately recognizes the warriors. Excited by the finding, the individual concludes that it is the renowned White Wolf Squadron, which symbolizes the military power of the Peng clan. Deeply grateful for being saved, the civilian shakes the commander's hand with immense gratitude, while the combatant instructs them to continue their journey safely. Clapping his hands to attract the group's attention, the young man announces that it's time to return to base before his superiors start demanding explanations for the delay. During the long return journey to the Peng family's properties, the atmosphere becomes a little more relaxed. Ascending the mountain path, the brute complains that they cannot drink in peace, and his companion points out that the responsibility lies with them for having disrespected an important hare. Upon reaching the inner area, they continue complaining about the young master's arrogance, but the commander orders everyone to be quiet and avoid further complications. Suddenly, the spiky-haired fighter jumps up when he notices the presence of an unknown individual positioned right in front of their lodging. The entire team stops mid-journey and begins shouting, demanding answers about the identity of the intruder in their territory. Observing the commotion with relative calm, Yule gives a gentle smile, noting that the group was indeed absent. Surround the main character, sniffing his clothes and conducting a harsh interrogation, finding it extremely strange that a good-looking guy was walking around the perimeter. Leap, the stick fighter, lands nearby to assess the situation up close. Taking the lead, the commander apologizes for the group's rudeness and explains that the prolonged isolation had made them somewhat agitated. Ignoring the commotion, the Patriarch calmly informs them that he was dispatched by the Supreme Leader himself to deal with a matter of great importance. Observing the young man from head to toe, the team members remain wary since they don't recall anyone with that appearance in the clan, and Yule reveals that he arrived recently. Setting aside suspicions for the time being, the leader assesses the situation and invites the visitor inside to have a proper conversation. Settle facing each other at a rustic table inside the lodge, awaiting the start of their conversation. Sipping some tea, the protagonist sets the cup down on the table, producing a dry sound that breaks the quiet of the room. Speaks first, formally identifying himself as an active member of the White Wolf Squadron and apologizing for the delay. His courtesy, Yule also introduces himself in a cordial manner and is asked about the true reason for his unplanned presence. Confident smile, the young man explains that he is there only to carry out a direct order from the great Patriarch Mugang. The atmosphere grows a little heavier as the warrior squints and questions the nature of the order the old man sent. Straight to the point, the newcomer announces that from that precise moment on he will occupy the position of permanent captain of the unit. In order to attest to the veracity of his statement, he places a relevant object on the table, reiterating the Patriarch's resolution The surface, the fighter identifies the leader's insignia of authority and asks, incredulously, if the boy actually intends to command them. He admits to having heard various rumors about a very resilient newcomer, while Yule expresses gratitude for the unexpected prestige. However, the warrior's tone changes when he mentions that despite his stamina, the novice has a reputation for being merely an intellectual devoid of any martial skill. In a tone of grave warning, he emphasizes that this group constitutes an elite division focused on combat, something far removed from a simple morning walk in the backyard. Keeping his arms firmly crossed, the combatant clarifies that it is impossible for them to accept a commander without battle experience, even if it is a direct order from the leadership. Considering the rather curious reprimand, Yule gives an ironic smile and retorts, stating that he too has heard rumors about the supposed unbreakable honor of that group. His teacup down calmly on the table, Yule remarks that judging them at this moment, the team resembles only a pack of untamed dogs, incapable of distinguishing right from wrong. Overcome with fury at the insult, the fighter smashes the container with his hand and demands to know what the stranger said. Maintaining his composure, the protagonist asks if they take pride in disobeying orders, reminding them that a martial team functions like the patriarch's sword, and that an instrument without an owner has no reason to exist. That there is a solid justification for the clan commander not using them, since a sharp blade that does not obey its owner becomes completely disposable. Slamming his fist on the table, the fighter insults the boy, calling him a wretch. At that moment, the brute rises in a rather hostile manner, forcefully pulling the seat back. Exuding a dense and somber presence, the individual warns that he will not allow an interfering son-in-law to give him orders, but is quickly interrupted by a voice ordering him to stop. Fighter's eyes widen, completely caught off guard by the unexpected pause. Entering through the entrance of the lodging, a different figure appears, breaking the heavy atmosphere of the environment. Newly arrived man asks in a stern tone what kind of affront this is against the newly arrived captain. His mind, Yule recalls that the White Wolf Squad was famous in the martial arts world for punishing criminals mercilessly. They carried out these acts using the secret alias of the Red Wolf Squad. The combatant admits internally that he has always been very curious about that team's history. Why individuals so guided by justice had distanced themselves from the Peng family in bygone times. And how did they end up becoming a group of autonomous mercenaries marked by conflict? However, upon meeting the individuals face to face, the father comes to understand that they are not the type of person who submits to institutional norms. With a wry smile, he notes that the young men resemble ferocious wolves more than disciplined martial arts practitioners, a fact that justifies the rivalry with the patriarch. Assessing the position of the newly arrived individual, Yule deduces that he acts as the point of stability for those troublemakers. Identifying himself politely, the long-haired man bows, stating that his name is Ochemu, the troop's vice commander, and acknowledges that they have a duty to follow the commands of the highest leadership. For his lackey Tazen's insubordinate behavior, he asks the stranger to show generosity and overlook his rudeness. Pleased with the deferential attitude, the protagonist orders him to raise his face, obtaining a polite show of gratitude in return. Pondering the situation, Yule observes that the vice commander reassured the group and guaranteed provisional submission, but he feels intrigued about what their next move will be. While peacefully drinking his beverage, the fighter is absolutely certain that they are plotting to sneakily expel him. Meanwhile, inside the barracks, the giant Taisen asks why he was prevented from terrorizing the newcomer, but Chemu retorts by questioning whether the victim seemed like someone who would give in easily. Boiling with disappointment, the individual asks if they will simply allow the intellectual to pretend to be the commander, hearing that such an attitude would ruin the team's prestige. Composure, the vice captain clarifies that expelling him aggressively would be a terrible strategy, given their delicate situation with the main lineage. Sporting a shrewd look, he determines that the strategy is to force the stranger to give up and leave on his own 2 feet. Days pass before the deputy commander suggests that the protagonist answer a distress call directed to the troops. As Yule examines the documents, Chemu clarifies that the Peng clan frequently welcomes these requests to operate in regions neglected by officials. Points out that considering the existence of other elite forces within the clan, there must be a very particular reason for summoning their group for the job so quickly. His mind, Chemu ridicules the commander's lack of practice, recalling that the other troops are busy or directed to work in the region. To sound helpful, he warns that if they refuse, absolutely no one will do the task, but suggests exploring other alternatives if the boy is not happy. Interrupting the conversation, Yule decides that they will carry out that task anyway and asks if they can start the trip the following morning. Celebrating the swallowed bait, the vice commander warns that the intellectual needs to organize himself to face a few days away from home, a suggestion that is quickly accepted. Sipping some tea, Chemu confirms the departure and predicts with malice that in a short time the rookie will tremble at the mere mention of the term squad. Promises himself that he will make quite evident the violent disparity between the cozy routine of a bookworm and the harsh reality of the martial arts world. The following morning, little Soil leaps radiantly into her father's arms, begging him to return home as quickly as possible. A warm smile, the fighter bids farewell to his beloved family, while his team waits behind him. The thunderous sound of heavy hooves hitting the grassy ground signals the start of the flock's expedition. Settled on their mounts, the members of the White Wolf Squadron cross the wide fields of that area. During the night, the team sets up camp around a campfire with the main character resting peacefully alongside his subordinates. The expedition continues at a rapid pace the following day, with the fighters galloping at top speed along a dirt track. Sometime later, the view changes, revealing an image of a small, completely isolated village with a rather desolate appearance. Pulling the controls of the mount, the vice commander indicates the rustic-looking dwellings and informs the commander that they have finally reached their target. Analyzing the landscape without making a sound, Yule adopts a serious expression as he perceives the dense atmosphere that prevails in that environment. Walking through the village, the protagonist comes across fallen and injured inhabitants, deducing that the true situation is much more serious than described in the distress call. Right after, Chemu clarifies that there is a criminal base in the vicinity, and that their objective is precisely to locate where this hideout is. He was on to inform that the bandits have doubled the security taxes demanded not long ago, a fact that inevitably culminates in this predicted model of misfortune. Assessing the situation coldly, Yule audibly deduces that those criminals intend to escape from that region very soon. Completely bewildered by the instant deduction, the vice captain inquires what the newcomer intends to convey with that statement. Looking at the lackey, the family man ironically questions whether there could be another logical alternative to justify the bandits' sudden behavior. Before the dialogue could proceed, the noise of overbearing voices emerged from within the woods, cutting off the clan's team's conversation. Intimidating-looking robbers blocked the passage, mockingly asking what such a well-dressed intellectual was doing in such a risky environment. The bandit commander lets out a repulsive laugh, ordering them to hand over all the funds and disappear from the scene, accompanied by their porters. Immediately, Chemu adopts a defensive stance and orders the captain to retreat, assuring him that he can handle those thugs on his own. Ignoring the warning, Yule takes a step forward, revealing the Peng family insignia, and orders them to surrender and reveal the route to the lair in exchange for mercy. Boiling with fury upon hearing the name of the powerful family, the criminal leader orders the newcomer to stop the games. Raising a worn blade, the individual shouts that on that elevation the only sovereigns are themselves. Completely oblivious to the risk, the horde of robbers violently attacks the rescue group. Sporting a merciless look, the vice commander begins to draw his blade from its sheath, labeling his opponents as fools. Incredibly quick movement, Chemu dashes off, slicing through the air and her enemies at a pace the criminals can't even keep up with. Due to the impact of the attack, fragments of the blades and limbs of the opponents fly directly onto the earthen ground. Without offering a moment to catch his breath, the warrior slices through another bandit in a merciless top-down attack. Terrified by the swift massacre, one of the rioters recoils, trembling upon noticing a brute approaching in his direction. Taking advantage of the opening, the giant Tayson lands a devastating punch directly to the bandit's face, knocking him out instantly. With only one individual left alive, the criminal crawls away in terror, indicating the direction of the hideout, seeking to preserve his own life. Intimidating smile, Yule informs them that the group actually only needed a guide to breathe in order to complete the initial stage of the task. Moments later, the team comes across a huge fortification hidden among the foliage, with the protagonist noticing that it was closer than he had thought. As soon as the troops approach the walls, the guards at the entrance begin shouting, demanding the identification of the invaders. Overflowing with arrogance, the vice captain murmurs that their identities are irrelevant and summons two of his subordinates. Ready to show their worth, the two fighters rush forward, vowing to resolve the obstacle in an instant. Combined jump, one of them focuses all the power on the lower limb to deliver a devastating front kick. The sturdy wooden door of the fortress is completely shattered by the terrifying impact of the physical assault. Entering the enemy territory with violence, Tayson unleashes a crushing punch that sends the initial guard flying. The incursion begins ruthlessly, while the other part of the squad clears the camp's defenses in a fraction of a second. The invasion continues, with Chemu leaping through the air and catching the guards off guard with incredibly fast movements. Calmly, through the shattered doorway, Yule alerts his troops to organize themselves for the battle. In a formidable charge, the vice commander lands a kick on a colossal wooden frame, sending a distinguished opponent flying. Exuding confidence, the long-haired fighter drives away enemies using purely the force of the pressure from his straight punches. Area of D8000, the fortress transforms into utter pandemonium as the group effortlessly sweeps through the enemy defenses. Accompanying the scene, the protagonist praises the impeccable performance of the team working together, highlighting their vast experience. However, the patriarch of the family is fully aware that all this turmoil constitutes only the initial phase of a genuine challenge. Giant sword strikes the ground with extreme aggression, followed by a roar full of rage. Supreme Commander of the fortification emerges in the middle of the outer area with a menacing pose questioning the audacity of the invasion. Humor in the context. Taisen smiles and labels the gigantic man as just a flamboyant thug. The bandit raises his colossal blade demanding to find out who they are, vowing to put a swift end to this charade. Maintaining an arrogant stance, the warrior from the Peng clan swears that he has never been defeated in a fight of brute force during his entire existence. Initiating the attack, the leader of the thugs considers it a mere accident and warns that he will quickly regret it. Taking a single step back, Taisen agrees with the statement and reveals that he too has never suffered a defeat. Between the two enormous men produces a formidable impact detonation that raises a cloud of dust throughout the area. Losing sight of the enemy, the leader is startled as the combatant appears, warning that he is too slow. Eyes widen when asked if the use of brute force is his only true attribute in battle. Overcome with rage at the provocation, the giant insults the intruder, calling him a coward, and charges forward with all his might. Series of heavy attacks shatters the wooden floor, yet Taisen dodges each one with absurd ease. Disappointed, the troublemaker notices that the young man is swerving at the very last millisecond, just to mock him. Letting out a chuckle, the fighter jokes that even a tortoise would be faster than those obvious attacks. By the dishonor, the criminal grips the weapon's handle, vowing to fulfill the audacious man's desire. In a powerful purple aura, the commander spins his colossal sword to deliver a devastating blow. Giant whirlwind of energy sweeps across the open area, promising to annihilate anything that stands in its path. Absolutely preserved in the center of the gale, Taisen opens his sleepy mouth, commenting that his opponent isn't so formidable after all. The fighter from the group blocks the opponent's gigantic attack with astonishing ease. Taking advantage of the exposed defense, he lands a devastating punch directly on the torso of the raider leader. Blow forces the criminal to stumble back, experiencing excruciating suffering that overwhelms his body. Calmly, Taisen inquires if the show is over, completely disregarding the terrified pleas for a pause. Without the slightest trace of patience, the giant orders the individual to shut up and concludes the task with a violent attack. Commander's fall generates absolute panic among the other subordinates, who face the situation in a state of complete shock. Yule approaches calmly and praises the skillful execution, while the warrior, breathing heavily, tries to mask his fatigue. At this moment, a sinister laugh echoes through the courtyard, originating directly from the outstretched figure of the vanquished giant. Looked on in astonishment as the terrifying voice claimed they had finished digging their own graves. By placing his palm on the floor, the criminal awakens a dark and enigmatic force that begins to spread throughout the room. Swears that all the invaders will deeply regret having set foot on that hidden fortification. Immediately afterwards, the henchmen from the very place begin to faint on the ground, suffering the consequences of the evil ability. Dosen understands the situation and yells, ordering the survivors to drop their blades immediately. The deputy commander proposes sparing the life of whoever surrenders, but the protagonist notices that something is very wrong there. With keen insight, the father detects the severe irregularity that is devouring the space around them. The criminals are plunged into complete terror, whimpering that everything has failed and that their end has come. Seeing that response as absurd, the long-haired fighter questions whether they have completely lost their sanity. Through the chaos, Yule's vision widens and his face turns, realizing an overwhelming burden is approaching. The entire team freezes instantly upon perceiving a powerful vibration emanating from the ground. Detonation ruins the floor of the fortification, hurling debris in all directions with savage force. Trying to see through the thick dust, the vice commander feels lost as to the source of that surprise attack. The smoke gradually dissipates, revealing a solitary silhouette, murmuring dissatisfied with all the untimely disorder. Peng family troop remains vigilant as they watch the unknown individual calmly walk through the ruined courtyard. An elderly man covered in scars rubs his face, demanding to know who had the audacity to disturb his rest. Character freezes completely upon identifying the terrifying aura emanating from that elderly individual. Focusing on the reddish mark near the old man's eye, Yule pieces things together and suspects the individual's true identity. Any sense of danger, the brute demands explanations from the stranger, forcing the captain to yell in terror, begging him to retreat. Disoriented by the sudden command, Taisen barely has time to blink before the old man emerges like a ghost beside him. The merciless intruder delivers a devastating blow right to the face of the team's robust warrior. A devastating burst of light cuts through the landscape, hurling the fighter a great distance. In a destructive collision, badly wounded, the young man tries to support himself on the ground, while the antagonist marvels at the fact that he withstood the impact. Praises the target's physical durability, adopting a sarcastic tone which blinds the vice captain with rage. And the attack on his companion Chamu dashes off like lightning, but his charge is easily avoided. Simple and swift gesture, the old man repels the attack and throws the swordsman away without any effort. Sporting a purely diabolical laugh, the mysterious master makes it clear that he is thoroughly enjoying the chaos. Sequence of brilliant attack sweeps across the outer area, mercilessly punishing the remaining members of the squad. Keeping his palm raised, the villain mocks the troop's weakness, asking if that vulnerability represented their limit. By suffocating pressure, the old man walks slowly, demanding that they bring him some more entertainment now. Assesses the enemy's terrifying approach, displaying a deeply cautious and calculating expression. Parked in the darkness, Yule validates his suspicions and acknowledges in his mind that his premonitions were completely correct. Finally identifies the forgotten legendary figure formerly known as the Little Demon of Extreme Evil. The history of martial arts, this individual has been cataloged as one of the most magnificent and cruel antagonists of all eras. Recalls the dark tales of how this abomination operated solely for pure entertainment decades ago. Legend says that he disappeared without a trace after causing an unforgivable tragedy in the Namgung clan. Gripping the hilt of his blade, the protagonist finds it surreal to encounter this figure there and questions whether the troop is in good condition. Supported by his fighting stick, Taisen struggles to remain standing, breathing with extreme difficulty after the violent blow. The deputy commander also sweats profusely, experiencing the strain of physical exhaustion resulting from the colossal difference in strength between the two sides. Assessing the surroundings, Yule breathes a sigh of relief upon realizing that despite everything, his lackeys have managed to survive. Seriously wounded, they remain alive, which allows the commander to focus exclusively on the imminent risk. A sickly laugh, the old man celebrates his enormous luck at having stumbled upon such captivating distractions. Overcome with complete panic, the remaining rioters retreat, trembling with terror, realizing that the elderly monster will destroy them all without a shred of compassion. Horror overwhelms the team, leading the criminals to abandon their blades and run desperately in an attempt to escape that incarnate nightmare. Sporting an evil laugh, the malevolent old man creates a black orb of power in his hand, mocking them that they should show a greater degree of affection before retreating. Without a doubt, he unleashes the dark burst with violent force toward those trying to flee. Succession of brutal detonations engulfs the landscape, hitting the henchmen who were trying to escape. Letting out an insane laugh, the master of evil admits that hearing the distress of those insects always represents immense pleasure for his hearing. Earth and ground, the giant Taisen clenches his fist tightly while the old man urges him to make the dogs bark once and for all. Overcome with anger and severely wounded, the troop fighter raises his face, shouting, outraged by the opponent's insolence. Ignoring the suffering, Taisen gathers momentum and charges with full force against the elder, vowing to put an end to him right then and there. Finding amusement in that terrified attack, the villain smirks and challenges the young man to prove what he can accomplish. The Peng family fighter gathers his full power and unleashes a devastating attack filled with aura. The old man raises only one palm and blocks the gigantic onslaught with astonishing simplicity, generating a powerful pulse of impact. Taking advantage of the unprotected defense, the Master of Darkness devises an unprecedented dense attack, promising to tear apart the opponent's structure. In a fraction of a second, the shadow attack hits Taisen squarely, catching the giant completely unexpectedly. In this critical moment, a voice calls out for the fallen combatant while the antagonist is distracted, noting how pleasant that sound of pain seems. Changing his mind, the Master of Darkness reveals that his initial idea was to entertain himself with the group for only one day. However, now he chose to prolong the suffering and annihilate them slowly over 3 consecutive days, leaving the fallen combatants quite tense. His antagonist with intense revulsion, Vice Commander Chaimu, refuses to embrace this fate without a fight. The group's final energy, he commands everyone to adopt a particular battle tactic and launch an attack in unison. Completely calm in the face of the synchronized attack, the old man gives an ironic smile, warning that their response came out of sync. Accumulating a gigantic amount of malevolent aura, the elder asserts that they should consider themselves privileged to witness his genuine martial prowess. Keimu leaps, gripping the blade, intent on blocking the devastating attack before it reaches her squadmates. However, the disparity in level becomes undeniable when the young man's eyes widen at the colossal aura that emerges directly in front of him. The elder unleashes a devastating, unstoppable attack, consuming the swordsman in a pulse of pure dark aura. The devastating collision clears the battlefield, leaving all members of the White Wolf squad completely defeated on the ruined ground. Commander's blade sticks into the ground beside him as he curses the disappointing circumstances they find themselves in. Prostrate and breathing with difficulty, the fighter blames his own physical constitution for having exhausted all his energy just to avoid being knocked out by the initial blow. By the degrading situation, the evil master asks if the young man on his knees plans to eventually beg to continue living. Breaking the atmosphere of panic, Yule steps to the center of the room, authoritatively warning that the fun is over and ordering his subordinates to step back. Breathing heavily and with scattered wounds, Chaimu raises his gaze, completely bewildered as he sees the foreign captain taking the lead in that failed battle. Intrigued by the sudden halt in the action, the elder asks who the intruder is, hearing Yule formally introduce himself as the leader of that troop. Observing the main character from head to toe, the old man jokes, declaring that he doesn't have the slightest bearing of a commander and has appeared to be a terrified rodent so far. Maintaining a grave expression, the patriarch concludes internally that the individual feigned rest purely to conceal his own lethal energy from his subordinates. Clinging to the floor, Chemu pleads with the stranger not to try to bargain away his own survival, suspecting that the antagonist would spare no one in the area. A smile to reassure the lackey, Yule orders him not to be deceived, revealing that the elder is a merciless creature guilty of thousands of disasters in past eras. Exhausting his tolerance for conversation, the Master of Darkness demands to discover if the newcomer possesses something truly worthwhile to exchange for forgiveness. Terrifying confidence, the protagonist assures everyone that he does indeed possess it, vowing to put an end to the villain while suffering a little less. Commander's injured eyes widen, struggling to comprehend the rookie's audacity in provoking a creature of that magnitude. Taken aback by the ironic remark, the old man freezes for a moment, trying to digest the boy's audacity. With a grimace, the evil master asks if the stranger is mocking him and advises him to think very carefully about what he is going to say. Overcome by sudden anger, the old man gathers his disordered energy, revolted by the target's lack of fear and asserting that he has a desire to depart this life for a better one. Swift movement, the villain throws one of his dark orbs directly towards the troop commander. Without showing the slightest difficulty, Yule raises his upper limb and merely repels the deadly attack as if he were brushing away a bothersome insect. The elder is stunned to death, watching his formidable ability neutralized in the blink of an eye, without causing any harm. Maintaining his impeccable posture and with the breeze ruffling his hair, the family man stands rigidly, attesting that the power disparity there is very different from what the old man had imagined. Joke of what had happened, the protagonist casually mentions that they were in the middle of a conversation, sarcastically inquiring about the supposed destructive technique. Out of control and rejecting the facts, the old man screams in terror, claiming it's impossible for anyone to escape that ultimate ability. Fury, the antagonist, unleashes a merciless storm of dark blasts, seeking to disintegrate the impudent one at all costs. Above average dexterity, Yule runs through the combat area, flawlessly dodging all shadow attacks. Following the surreal movement, the vice commander's jaw drops as he watches the foreigner sweep across the battlefield in a fraction of a second, remains in a state of profound stupor, noting that the vulnerable intellectual theorist is in fact an extraordinary fighter. Taking advantage of the space in the opponent's attacks, the family man gains momentum and jumps, emanating his own ancestral energy. Appearing directly in front of his opponent, Yule directs his illuminated palm of force and inquires where he acquired those terrible habits of making noise while other people are talking. Without offering any opportunity to block, the leader unleashes a gigantic golden wave very close to the body against the Master of Darkness. Explosion completely cleans the landscape, overcoming the power of the shadows with an overwhelming visual shock. Back, the old man is unable to comprehend how that young man invalidated his unique martial technique and copied the intensity of his attacks so organically. Stranded on the ground, Tazen and Chaimu watch the event in complete shock, with the big guy stammering to check if his colleague actually witnessed that miracle unfold. Severely injured and smoking, the antagonist admits, filled with dread, that his rival managed to perfectly execute the retaliation after visualizing the move only once. Gazing at Yule's grandiose pose, illuminated by the sun, the elder confesses without the slightest doubt that this fellow is far from being a useless reader of scrolls. Curious about the young man's surreal abilities, the Master of Evil demands to discover the purpose of a monster of that caliber in that location and what its true identity is. Maintaining his composure, Yule points out that he had already introduced himself as a member of the Peng family, but the old man lets out a laugh, questioning the clan's aptitude for forging a monster of such scale. A confident smile, the main character announces that things will undergo transformations from now on, as he will make that family the most prominent and formidable on the entire planet. Hearing the audacious statement, the old man lets out a weak, restrained laugh, at first considering the young man's plan a joke. Immediately afterwards, he bursts into a maddening, resounding laugh, making his insanity echo throughout the ruined courtyard of the fortification. Shifting his expression to one hungry for a duel, the antagonist agrees that the clan can indeed reach the summit, but announces that he will first subdue the impudent one with his own hands. Physique begins to swell, bizarrely acquiring frightening musculature and bulging veins, as he warns the boy that he should consider himself privileged. In the repulsive mutation, the big guy and the vice captain enter a state of total shock in the face of that overwhelming spiritual density. Remarkably calm in the face of immense danger, the family man merely displays a sideways smile, completely unconcerned by his opponent's increased energy. Adopting his definitive and most fatal version, the little demon of extreme evil swears in a terrifying tone that the stranger will bitterly regret having forced him to reach this stage. Abruptly shifts to a peaceful, light-filled setting in the gigantic main hall of the Peng clan, a stark contrast to the turmoil of the conflict. Against the wooden balcony, Yon watches the foliage tumbling in the breeze, revealing a silent apprehension. Gaze reveals severe distress over the state of her companion, who has set off on that distant task. Noticing the young woman's distress, the family leader gently approaches and inquires as to why she is experiencing that cold air outside. The matriarch lovingly observes that the young woman has been having sleepless nights and anxiously awaiting news from her partner. Far away, the memory of Yul practicing calligraphy serenely emerges in his mind, while a reflection highlights that the family's fighters are used to enduring harsh winds, yet emotional burdens are constantly more arduous to face. In his reflections, Yeon contemplates his partner instructing young Soil in reading and writing, noticing how different he appears today. Consumed by anguish, the young woman recalls that until recently the boy had acted merely as a modest teacher in a quiet village. At that moment, the sound of hurried footsteps crossing the wooden walkway breaks the heavy quiet of the pavilion. Reaching the location breathless, the talented young Seojin shouts for his sister, asking if she has heard about the big event. Completely exhausted, the young man announces that the celebrated White Wolf Squadron has finally returned from that distant and risky undertaking. There, at the entrances to the fortification, a crowd gathers, excitedly discussing the rumors that the team managed to defeat the fearsome demon of extreme evil. Evidence of the completed work is shown when one of the combatants lifts the antagonist's skull, leaving the villagers astonished by the reality of the feat. Unnoticed amidst the chaos, Yul walks serenely while the guards suspect that the intellectual has accomplished more than simply causing trouble. Ignoring the rumors, the protagonist maintains his tranquility, aware of who is actually responsible for the chaos in that forest. From the euphoric group view, the father continues on his way towards the family's private quarters. As soon as she crosses the threshold, young Soil flashes a radiant smile and dashes towards her father's lap, while his wife lets out a relieved breath. Overflowing with joy, the boy displays a kind expression upon seeing again the two most important individuals in his life. His family. In a hug to ease the pain of absence, he sweetly informs them that he has finally returned home safe and sound. Later, the troops gather before the majestic main hall, preparing for the official audience with the family commander. Giving the leader a light tap on the back, Vice Commander Chaimu instructs the foreigner to take advantage of the patriarch's positive state of mind to gain some favor with the clan. Clenching his fist tightly, the vice captain hesitates for a second before catching the attention of the group's leader. Displaying a serious demeanor, Chaimu admits that he is still unable to agree that the full responsibility for annihilating that supreme danger rests solely with the squadron. A haunting memory of the confrontation invades his consciousness, reminding him that if it weren't for the commander's direct action, all of them would have become mere pastimes for the antagonist. Holding the reward for the undertaking, the giant Tayson fully agrees, emphasizing that it was the intellectual who confronted the isolated monster and annihilated it. Calmly against his partner's shoulder blade, Yul seeks to reassure the team, assuring them that they are not usurping anyone else's credit. However, the entire team bows in submission, begging him to report the truth to the patriarch and claim victory in the battle. Displaying a gentle smile, the protagonist praises the group's integrity, judging their excessive correctness to be even slightly disproportionate. To face the team, the young man signals the end of the debate, confessing that he abhors the notion of attracting attention and suffering from individuals bothering him all day long. Processing the news, Chima's vision widens as she notices an illogical peculiarity and wonders if the Grand Commander of the suit-clad family is unaware of that colossal ability. His unwavering stance, Yul pledges confidentiality and admits that not even his own companion knows about his combat skills. By the paradoxical stance, the vice captain inquires about the reason why he chose to display his true abilities to the group in that forest. Looking over his shoulder, the family man clarifies simply that as a newly appointed captain, he would never stand idly by while his lackeys lost their lives. To his composed demeanor, he requests that no recognition be given to him, as managing the notoriety would only leave him profoundly exhausted. Gritting his teeth and clenching his fist, Tayson shows considerable concern about the ramifications of this falsehood created for the family. Panicking, the giant envisions hordes of antagonists lining up to confront them, purely to ascertain the supposed capabilities of the group that defeated the Icon of Darkness. With a relaxed laugh, Yul reassures his partner that should such a scenario occur, he will quickly turn all opponents into corpses, leaving the group terrified by the cruelty. Hiding part of his face in the darkness, he murmurs naturally that things will turn out for the best in the end. Accepting the task, Chaimu takes a deep breath and orders the entire troop to adjust their positions to face the upcoming challenge. Stationed in front of the enclosure gates, the deputy commander warns that as soon as they cross the boundary, they will be immortalized as the brave men who slew the demonic being. Flowing with confidence, the protagonist merely displays a slight smile while listening to the energetic validation from his specialized team. Final resolution established and the nervousness under control, Yul gives the order for them to finally enter the chamber. The sturdy wooden gates slowly recede, revealing the luxurious space where the family's senior leadership awaits them. Seated in his royal chair, Patriarch Mugang observes with a smile that the troublemakers have indeed accomplished a colossal feat on this occasion. entire squadron performs a courteous bow in unison, demonstrating gratitude for the warm welcome from the commander-in-chief. Quite euphoric, the elderly man lets out a resounding laugh, confessing that the excellent timing of the day perfectly justifies the entire celebration for the team. In his mind, the patriarch recalls that the annihilated victim was a macabre legend that not even the greatest organizations in the martial universe were able to contain for years on end. Veteran leader pondered that even wounded, that elderly monster still possessed the energy to confront him on equal terms in a frank battle. The vision of the antagonist's destructive pressure crosses Mugang's mind, who still hesitates to accept that an aberration of that caliber has been brought down. At his son-in-law's passive silhouette, the head of the family notes that the end of that imminent danger came under the immediate command of the newly arrived captain. By the false victory, Chaimu frowns and almost gives in to the urge to reveal the truth right then, and they're hoping to pass all the glory of the task onto the protagonist. Analyzing the scene with a keen eye, one of the cunning council members detects an ideal opportunity to interfere. Rising from his chair, the individual requests permission to speak from the patriarch, who quickly authorizes him to speak. Adopting a flattering tone, the old man mentions that in a very short time the fame of the White Wolf Squad will resonate throughout the martial universe, attracting the attention of multiple factions. Stroking the hair on his face, Mugang agrees that the prediction is quite plausible, since annihilating an evil sovereign is no small feat. Sporting an ironic smile, the advisor claims that the situation is excellent for the clan. However, he leaves it implied that there is a huge obstacle hidden in the scenario. Shifting his gaze to the group, the individual feigns unease, questioning whether the team's current leader is actually capable of managing such complex issues. Deputy Commander becomes enraged, listening to the elderly man try to argue that he is not belittling the commander's son-in-law when he is already acting with complete disdain. Continuing the drama, the council member points out that opportunists will soon begin to besiege the troops, and that managing this team will become an unbearable burden for the foreigner. Eyeing the old man with a sharp gaze, the patriarch asks him not to stall, spurred on by the man's alleged loyalty in seeking to lighten the burden on the young man's shoulders. By the audacity, Mugang rests his chin and directly asks if the subject has already devised an alternative replacement for the position. Any shame, the council member nominates his own son Do-won, assuring that the young man is perfectly suited to take control in various ways. Recalling memories, the patriarch confronts the old man about his contradiction, since he was completely averse to this same concept in the past, but at this moment he pleads for the position. Using the pretext of paternal intuition, the old man argues that the heir has grown up, forcing the commander to inquire whether he truly believes the young man is prepared for conflict. Noticing the ridiculousness of that offer, Chaimu steps forward in angry stride, prepared to destroy the political charade of the summit. Could utter a word, Yule calmly stretched his arm out in front of him, blocking the intrusion without making a sound. Casting a passive glance over his shoulder, the main character silently requests that the vice commander remain calm and trust in how things are progressing. Taking the floor again, the patriarch agrees that the nominated candidate possesses the necessary attributes, but on a festive occasion such as this, those interested should be heard. Turning his voice to the center of the room, Mugang calls upon the entire White Wolf team to state their true position regarding the change. Great leader perfectly remembers that the group initially abhorred the arrival of the newly arrived captain, a fact that reassures the advisor of the success of his scheme. Adopting a menacing pose, the team members exchange sharp glances as the commander questions whether they are eager to welcome a new leader. In impeccable coordination, the fighters advance a step in a resounding manner, firmly establishing their position. Prostrating themselves with reverence immediately on Yule's back, the entire squadron announces loudly and clearly that the man stationed there is and will remain their sole leader. Hours later, in a private room, the council member lets out a short laugh, wondering if the heir actually enjoyed that embarrassing display in front of everyone. Consuming his drink reluctantly, the old man grumbles that the contractors rejected him in front of everyone, trying to alleviate his frustration with the idea that they lacked alternatives. Sporting a calm smile, Do-won assesses that the team has just passed the evaluation stage due to the success of the undertaking, so it would be illogical to provoke the patriarch and his harass anger at that moment. Lowering the container, the elderly man acknowledges that he was hasty in his assessment, while the young man softens the situation by expressing gratitude for his father's attempt, but points out that the terms chosen by the group were slightly unusual. The memory of the impactful moment returns, highlighting the fighters lined up, pledging unconditional loyalty to the captain. Kima's grave and resolute expression echoes in the boy's head, recalling the firm declaration that this was the unanimous desire of the entire group. Calmly sipping from his cup, the talented fighter admits that he understands the rejection, but finds it quite intriguing that they have drawn such a rigid and inflexible line about proceeding with the foreigner. A perceptive smile, Do-won deduces that the atmosphere within that historically turbulent unit has completely transformed, giving the impression that those untamed wolves have finally stumbled upon a commander to guide the group. Once settled in the room, Do-won informs his father that given how things are unfolding, it is impossible to forcibly change the group's leader. Therefore, the only alternative is to force the young man to abandon his position of his own free will. Drumming his fingers on the surface, the veteran advisor inquires if the young man has already devised a plan, to which he nods, mentioning that he plans to test the limits of the cohesion that keeps the White Wolf Squad united. A smile laden with sinister intentions, Do-won proposes administering a mild shock to the troops in order to observe the consequences. Far from those power struggles, the small town of Soil runs radiantly through the entrances to the fortification. Overflowing with enthusiasm, the little girl shouts, calling for her father as she rushes towards the warrior, holds her daughter in a strong embrace, and sweetly asks if she behaved well during her absence, and filled with pride, Soil assures her that she did, and that she even enjoyed a lot of delicious treats. The household experiences a profound tranquility dominating his heart as he embraces that tiny being. Gazing at the enchanting scene, Yeon approaches with a sweet smile while the little girl giggles, complaining that the hair on her father's face tickles her. His partner gently inquires about his return, hearing that the patriarch seemed quite pleased with how the undertaking unfolded, at which point the young man details that he had to spend some time celebrating with the team before he could return home. A slightly more serious tone, the protagonist turns his face and cautiously summons his beloved, and surprised by the abrupt change in the atmosphere, the woman stumbles over her words as she replies. The young woman lowers her gaze, revealing her concern, and pleads with her partner to give up acting as commander of that risky group. By the request, Yul asks if something bad has happened, but his companion quickly reveals her distress, arguing that he went out to pursue common criminals and ended up confronting an evil mythical figure. Her own fabric, Yeon cites the terrifying rumors about that merciless creature and points out that in theory her partner isn't even listed as a martial arts practitioner in the family. She continues her outburst by pointing out that the young man had never carried anything more substantial than the child itself during his life, which leaves Yul completely disconcerted as he tries to reassure his wife, only to be interrupted immediately. With tears welling up in her eyes, the young woman admits her terror as she imagines what would happen if he were injured in that senseless fight, questioning how she and the girl would manage to stay alive without him. Gazing at his beloved's tears, the warrior internally recognizes that he acted foolishly by not noticing the extent of her distress. While in her father's lap, little Soil senses the pain and naively inquires about the reason for her mother's tears. Protagonist takes responsibility for believing that passing the laurels of triumph to the group would resolve all complications, acknowledging that he was absurdly childish, which leads him to utter a genuine apology aloud. Stroking his companion's face, Yul assures her that should that be her wish, he will request to be relieved of his duties the very next morning without hesitation. Her tears with the fabric of her clothes, Yeon murmurs that he always has the exact answer to reassure her, but emphasizes that the previous appeal carried extreme seriousness. Turning her face away somewhat embarrassed, she admits that she noticed how attached her partner had become to that disorganized troop, and understands equally that due to clan rules it's not a position one abandons just like that. Her composure, the companion raises two fingers and indicates that she will agree to his remaining as commander only if he meets two very specific requirements. Surprised by the change in behavior, the father blinks repeatedly and inquires about the nature of the agreement. A whole week passes until the sound of a piece of wood tearing through the air rang out intensely throughout the training space. Willpower and strength, little Soil executes her fighting stances, waving her wooden staff in various directions. Closely watching the girls exercise, Yul wields a wooden blade positioned in the center of the large open area of the fortification. Thoughts drift back to his conversation with his companion, recalling the precise moment when she made those two agreements to put his mind at ease. Gently waving the training weapon, he recalls that the initial rule was to remain as far away as possible from dangerous jobs. Yeon's voice echoes in his head, pleading with his companion to avoid putting himself at risk in deadly scenarios like the one that had just occurred. A perfect combat base in the area, the boy recalls that his companion's second demand was that he finally begin learning genuine combat techniques in order to protect himself. Including the series of maneuvers, the protagonist lowers the wooden weapon and exhales calmly to regulate his breathing. The warrior's moment of calm is broken by the sound of robust footsteps approaching from behind him. Reaching the area with some lackeys, Do-won greets the leader in a rather ironic manner. While maintaining his composure, Yul turns his face away and inquires about the identity of that individual. Adopting a feigned courtesy, the council member declares it a privilege to meet him and notes that the rumors about the intellectual training in martial arts have been confirmed as the information is spreading rapidly within the clan. Inside, the intruder lets out a mocking laugh, considering it utter insanity that such an inexperienced individual would position himself as the head of an elite team. Assessing Yule's serene demeanor, the individual internally deduces that he is nothing more than an arrogant fool and has difficulty accepting that the group's fierce fighters actually revere such a commander's profile. Intensifying his suspicions, Do-won finds it quite peculiar that the young man figured in such a majestic conquest without boasting, judging that all that in action is not simply modesty but indicates the posture of someone hiding some secret. The memory of the council returns to the member's consciousness, recalling that Vice Commander Chaimu himself had frequently led the rejection of troop command in the past. He also recalls the group's intimidating stance, blocking any attempt to alter the leadership, taking it as a clear message that no one should bother the foreigner. Returning to the present moment, Do-won feigns modesty and offers direct assistance to the new leader to improve his performance, forcing Yule to ask how he would carry out such an action. Sustaining the artificial laughter, the advisor argues that remaining only in the fundamentals is boring and that real experience is indispensable, at which point, noticing the trap, the protagonist recognizes that the subject possesses good eloquence, but his real intentions are all too clear. Resolved to participate in the charade, the patriarch feigns ignorance and inquires about the indication, prompting the visitor to assert that true evolution comes solely from real duels, especially for someone in such a precarious position. Running his hand over his jaw, the fighter nods calmly, remembering that the events of the previous task had completely spiraled out of control and turned out to be far worse than anticipated. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Do-won argues that the foreigner needs to get used to the tension of a confrontation and formally proposes that they both cross arms in a friendly duel right there. Displaying a highly calculating view, Yule questions whether the disparity in techniques between the two might be excessive, questioning whether the activity could even be considered authentic training. Feigning good intentions, the council member assures the beginner that it will be a very straightforward process and that he will only correct any mistakes in the beginner's movements, a proposal that is accepted by the protagonist without any hesitation and with serenity. Settled face to face on the ground, Do-won proposes that the boy manipulate the same wooden blade and demonstrate the attacks he was performing to allow for an analysis of the novice's level. Using slow and almost clumsy maneuvers, Yule shakes the weapon, asking if that's the correct way to do it, while the advisor acts as a wise mentor, correcting the target's pose and ordering him to adjust the axis and control the blade. The head of the family continues the charade, scratching the back of his neck and smiling awkwardly as he mentions that the task is much more complex than it appears, receiving the reassuring warning that it always starts this way. Experiencing total superiority, Do-won lowers his defenses with confidence and goads the novice commander into attempting a frontal attack against him. Gripping his own wooden tool with vigor, the advisor asserts with excessive arrogance that his rival is permitted to apply his full strength, promising that he would never suffer a scratch from that amusement. Gripping the blade's hilt tightly, the protagonist adjusts his stance as he listens to his opponent's firm command instructing him to approach. Without wasting a single millisecond, the warrior's silhouette merely vanishes from the point, reducing the separation in a terrifying blink of an eye. Even before the council member could finish his arrogant speech, Yule appeared face to face with the man, raising his blade in a relentless pose. The invader's vision widens in pure terror upon realizing that he was unable even to follow the unreal displacement of that novice theorist. And bizarre energy dominates the environment, crushing the council member's spirit through a risky impulse as the wooden blade falls swiftly. Completely consumed by terror, Do-won lets out a cry of anguish, absolutely certain that his existence had ended at that very moment. Sinks into a funereal silence following the assault, the invader remaining rigid and shaking on the ground while the commander stands upright and calm before his face. The tool slowly, Yule gazes at the individual collapsed on the ground and inquires in the most naive tone on the planet if he is in good health. Gasping for air and sweating profusely, the advisor can barely form sentences, stammering in despair as he tries to understand what kind of monstrous energy nearly split him in two. Overflowing with a friendly smile, and without any guilt, the protagonist returns to the inquiry, seeking to discover what happened, making the coward even more frightened by the secret. Some time later, the sun shines brightly and peacefully, illuminating the day's practice in the areas belonging to the clan. Entire White Wolf squadron is grouped and organized in straight rows in the center of the main space. Taking the lead of the troop, Vice Captain Chaimu yells at the top of his lungs, aiming to render formal salutes to their commander. Walking calmly towards his subordinates, Yule inquires whether they have obtained adequate rest after their previous task, receiving a strong collective assent in response. Approaching the leader, Chaimu recalls that the young man had requested a debate on a relevant topic. While noticing the tension in the atmosphere, the protagonist begins to suspect the situation. Sporting an uncertain expression, Yul questions whether the troops remain dissatisfied with his participation, and whether they desire his resignation, which startles the vice captain, who promptly denies it. To escape all responsibility, Taeson and the others begin the accusation, transferring all the blame for the initial disobedience to the shoulders of the vice commander, who immediately orders the deserters to shut up. Ignoring the commotion of his companions, Chaemu assumes a rather serious and focused expression to directly address the true reason for that communication with the leader. Looking the boss in the eye, he admits that the past combat served to reveal the extent of the team's vulnerability, confessing that they only remain alive because of the outsider's power, forcing Yul to question his ultimate purpose. Joining his palms in an act of deep reverence, the vice commander subtly bows his head and begs the warrior to act as an instructor and make the team substantially more powerful. Following their leader, the entire White Wolf troop bows their heads in impeccable coordination, audibly repeating the plea for the foreigner to definitively take the reins of their instruction. Processing the loyalty of those tough guys, the family patriarch's vision diminishes as he echoes the sentence, noting the appetite for progress that has taken hold of the group. Accepting the demand of his recent pack, Yul agrees to the compromise, but clearly warns them to organize themselves very well, provoking an enthusiastic celebration among the brutes. Displaying a smile almost as intimidating as that of the enemies he has already defeated, the captain announces that his training tactics will prove to be stupidly harsh and merciless. Subsequently, the troop's theoretical stone men emerge, supporting colossal rocks on their backs, roaring and sweating profusely as they feel the authentic torment of the new training regime. Under the scorching sun, the team suffers greatly, supporting colossal stones on their spines under brutal conditions. Settled peacefully drinking his tea, Yul ponders that the body is the true vessel for the martial arts. Observing the brute struggling under the burden, the leader considers that some individuals would have to be born again to reach the appropriate physical stature. This physical restriction, the outsider sees a vast untapped talent in his exhausted followers. Assessing the team's sacrifice, he holds the firm belief that this harsh foundation represents the path for them to reach a higher level. Calmly, the family man murmurs, locking his book, about the stubborn nature of that squadron. Hidden in the nearby penthouse, Doan spies on the surroundings and wonders how long he should observe this scene continue. Faced with that illogical scenario, the council member judges that those vain fighters have completely lost their sanity. Bewildered by the group's blind submission, he seeks to understand why they tolerated suffering through all that ordeal. At that moment, the terrifying memory of that sham battle overwhelms his mind, bringing back the bestial pressure of the commander. Date onward, the young advisor proved unable to sleep peacefully, haunted by bad dreams of imminent defeat. Troubled by this enigma, Do-won adopts the resolute resolution to investigate the true identity of that intellectual theorist on his own. Breaking the heavy atmosphere, young Soil runs over, overflowing with joy, summoning her father to the center of the courtyard. Protagonist lifts the little girl in his lap next to his wife, displaying a strikingly affectionate and calm family scene. Observing that charming relationship from afar, the intruder ends up judging the child to be quite docile and notices a more human side to the subject. To dispel these sentimental thoughts, Do-won shakes his head and focuses on his primary goal. He investigates the stranger all day long. He is completely disappointed to find himself unable to uncover any secret. Later, the commander finishes his morning reading, closing the book with extreme serenity. Walking over to the exhausted group on the floor, Yul praises everyone's performance, acknowledging that they endured the ordeal far better than he had anticipated. Everyone that any individual has the option to abandon the task at any time. However, he assures an exclusive reward for the member who completes the daily objective. A firm tone, the commander vows to grant them exactly what they most desire in the universe if they continue to resist. Heavily on the ground, Taeson asks if they heard correctly and notes that the whole group is far more stubborn than it appears. Far away, the advisor scratches his scalp, unable to grasp anything about that strange practice. He is curious to notice that the tired faces of the combatants are immediately filled with conviction right after that uncertain oath. In the dead of night, a cry of disappointment resounds, shattering the thick stillness of the forest. Walking alone through the shadows of the vegetation, the commander follows a path far from the main structure. Stealthily, Do-won follows the target's footprints, cautiously retreating through the vegetation. The spy promises himself that he will not return to his rest that night without unmasking that intellectual theorist. Yul stops walking and glances back, sensing an aggressive entity quite close by. Taking advantage of the darkness, an assassin leaps from the trees with phenomenal speed, prepared to deliver a deadly attack. Path, the advisor intensifies his pace, consumed by the terror of losing his target from his field of vision. Breathing heavily, he considers it utter nonsense that a mere instructor could move so quickly. As soon as he reaches the summit of the hill, Do-won freezes upon seeing the stranger standing there wielding a blade in the dead of night. In a fraction of a second, a monumental golden energy in the shape of a sword falls from the sky, possessing overwhelming power. The shock of the attack annihilates the enemies camouflaged in the rock, leaving the spy completely terrified before the scene. Without showing any sign of fatigue, the warrior rotates his tool, organizing a second destructive maneuver. A pulse of blue energy breaks through the darkness in a downward strike that ascends, tearing through the airspace. The intensity of the blow is so great that it drives away the clouds, revealing the night star illuminating the starry vault. Peace is immediately restored, and the commander remains unharmed atop the mountain following the clearing of the terrain against all threats. Turning his face gently, Yule displays a peaceful expression, while his blade continues to radiate the residue of millennia of pressure. Thrown onto the rocky ground, Dowon stammers, overcome by a state of stupor, having extreme difficulty accepting the bestiality he has just witnessed. A few days later, the main character resumes his quiet daily life, leafing through a new volume in the Peng clan's courtyard. In order to interrupt the analysis, the council member approaches very carefully and captures the commander's attention. To the point, the boy directly asks if the captain was responsible for putting a definitive end to that supreme demon in the woods. The young man bases his distrust on the statement that the team would never be able to defeat that incarnate legend regardless of the antagonist's physical condition. Looking at the intruder, Yule delves into the literature and calmly inquires whether he might be excessively belittling his own colleagues. Character points out that the advisor matured alongside those warriors and should know very well where their power ends. Tired of beating around the bush, Dowon demands to find out what the fighter intends to do by concealing so much energy. Frank View, the family leader, reveals that his only goal is to ensure the protection of his partner and his beloved child. Immediately after, it encompasses the security of the Great Patriarch and the complete legacy they built in that environment. He concludes by annexing the White Wolf Squad, declaring that he aims to protect all members from external cruelties. Changing his tone, the fighter gravely warns that he will show no mercy whatsoever to anyone who puts his recent family in danger. Following the leader's resolution, the council member notes that these statements sound entirely true and crystal clear. By such unwavering loyalty, the young man takes an extreme measure and concludes that he has a duty to be close to someone with that profile. Act of complete submission, Dowon prostrates himself before the stranger and promises to offer his own life to him from that date forward. With the group huddled together, in the background the young man cries out for shelter, while the commander merely assesses the recent recruit with serenity. The wooden weapon tears through the surroundings with fantastic speed during morning practice. Absolutely focused, the fighters in the group alternate vigorous attacks as perspiration drips down their exhausted faces. Observing the scene from a distance, two council members are astonished to witness the group's determination, wondering if those outlaws had indeed brought down the legendary icon of darkness. The outer area, calmly, Yule accompanies his subordinates, applying maximum effort in the exercise. Commander finds all that energy quite stimulating. He recalls that those precise warriors formed the ruthless group he knew in his previous existence. Irrational loads, the young men demonstrate a level of physical brutality beyond the norm. The tragic vision of their fate crosses the main character's mind, who intensely hopes that this time the outcome will not unfold in that way. As the troops pick up the pace of hand-to-hand combat, the stranger assesses each movement with total focus. Displaying a vision full of determination, the father of the family promises himself that he will ensure the protection of each member there. However, the disorder begins when Tayson approaches in a panic, demanding to know what they did wrong for the commander to grant them 48 consecutive hours of rest. Immediately behind him, the other part of the pack plunges into utter terror, begging the leader not to abandon them so abruptly. Seeking to calm the situation, Yule explains that it is not a case of punishment, justifying that they merely need to rest in order to assimilate the instruction. Leader reiterates that pushing the physical structure to its ultimate limit daily is not the only way to make progress. Using his keen senses, he clearly notices that the troop's muscle tissue has already reached a critical level of exhaustion. Adopting the role of team commander, Chemu orders the giant to stop grumbling and comply with the determination, causing Tayson to lower his face in utter disappointment. The dialogue is interrupted by a gentle voice that catches the eye of the nearby leader. Through the rustic partition, young Soil exudes charm as her father details how much she begged to accompany him. Team falls apart, instantly fascinated by the tiny image of the girl. Taking a step to the side, the warrior urges the girl to greet the brutes in a gentle manner. Abandoning her protective embrace, she performs a graceful curtsy and offers a rather embarrassed greeting towards the boys. The hardened fighters are completely subdued by the girl's gentleness. Bending down on the earthen floor to level it, Tayson exhales contentment and returns the greeting, using the softest tone of voice he can muster. However, the child is afraid of the individual size and runs off to take cover behind his father's clothing. Insides shatter into several fragments when he realizes he has frightened the little girl. Shaken, he laments the fact that the child did not feel fear of the imposing and frightening Supreme Leader, but ran away from him, whereas Yule finds the event captivating. Adopting a lighthearted tone, the leader jokes that the expectation would be for the crowd to shed tears of joy upon encountering the giant, but instead absolute terror prevailed. At that moment, Soil grasps the cloth of her father's garment with her small hands and holds up an immaculate handkerchief. Wide gleaming eyes, the child affectionately pleads with the giant to stop crying. The adorable shock is definitive, and Tayson accepts the handkerchief, crying copiously with joy, showing gratitude for the gesture, while the leader finds the event amusing. The entertainment is paused when Seo-jin arrives, walking up to the group and inquiring about the cause of such satisfaction in the room. Talented heir praises the group's dedication, addressing rumors that the troupe at this moment symbolizes the authentic character of the family. Seeking to maintain modesty, Tayson expresses gratitude for the compliments but emphasizes that they have a long road ahead. Pleased with the courteous response, the prominent young man shows off in a very friendly manner. His face towards the stranger, Seo-jin admits that he went to that spot because he needs to ask for a considerable favor, receiving a prompt reply from his relative. Changing the scene, they both walk through a peaceful wooded area, while the successor suggests they enjoy some of the open space. Contemplating the organic setting, the boy offers a formal welcome to the young man and expresses gratitude for the excellent performance he has been delivering. Memory emerges in the prodigy's mind, showing his sister and the fighter calmly distributing food during a difficult time. Assures that zeal for the clan already represents a payment beyond what is necessary, purely wishing that they enjoy long and happy lives within the family. At the vegetation, Seo-jin expresses interest in the celebrated Sodam village, noting that her sister often spoke excessively about the splendor of that place. A quiet enclosure, Yul reflects that this community represented his private refuge whenever the external weight became unbearable. He remembers the turbulent date when he rescued citizens from an offensive only to be held responsible by them due to the bandits' fear of revenge. However, the leader did not lower his head and assured the frightened people that he would bear all the blame for what was about to happen. Depicts the main character overcoming adversity numerous times until the villagers finally regained their peaceful way of life. Hearing the conclusion of the story, the boy exhales with gratitude and observes that his relative only managed to keep his promise because he continued breathing. Maintaining the pleasant atmosphere, Seo-jin admits that he never had a chance to be genuinely grateful to the enigmatic figure who ensured his survival in the forest. Confesses that at first he considered the hypothesis insane, but at this moment he has the absolute belief that the masked savior was his own relative. The head of the household remains completely silent, merely absorbing the young man's precise deductions. Placing a portion of tea, the successor inquires what the true reason was that led the stranger to risk everything in order to protect him that night. Gazing at the steaming drink, Seo-jin surmises that the solution is far more elementary than it appears. By deducing that he took such action because the prodigal heir was the inaugural individual of that fortification to welcome the former intellectual as an authentic part of the family. A memory comes back to life with the young man recalling that he had expected to see his brother-in-law be belittled by the others, but was instead welcomed with complete receptiveness by the heir. Niece's sunny vision strengthens the conviction that the fighter concealed his level for a good cause. However, she warns that the situation will become complicated very quickly. By providing full support, the heir ensures that the family will provide all the necessary foundation the moment the commander chooses to display his genuine energy to the world. Yul finds the offer of support amusing and returns to the question, suggesting that the young man does not yearn to take control and merely seeks to exist free from family obligations. The stranger's expression grows serious as he audibly ponders this genuine and frank yearning for independence. With the vegetation swaying in the breeze, the protagonist confirms his loyalty by stating that he will remain with his brother-in-law simply because they form a united group. From that peaceful enclosure, a large caravan approaches the main entrances of the colossal property at an accelerated pace. Watching the sudden departure, two clan guardians murmur about the arrival of the rejected visitors, fearing the dark legends that surround them. Carrying sturdy crates, the lackeys consider it an outrage that the supreme leader allowed that brutal rabble onto the blessed family lands. Inside the main room, one of the council members anxiously asks the leader if they will actually be harboring that troublesome group. Settled in his royal chair, Mugang lets out a brief laugh and inquires whether the old man persists in his opposition to the presence, even though he knows of the team's history of barbarities. Warns that such individuals are not merely conventional thugs, exposing their true nature under the name of the ruthless Serum Squad of the Murim Alliance. Of this team carries a sinister burden throughout the martial arts universe due to its barbaric tactics of annihilation that leave no trace. Notoriety was built upon piles of defeated opponents overcoming all sorts of adversities that stood in the path of the central force. Trembling with fear, the advisor pleads with the commander to reconsider the choice, arguing that authorizing access for that unit represents an unprecedented risk. Ignoring the lackey's desperate pleas, the patriarch merely disregards the warning, maintaining his unbreakable and confident pose. Celebrated warrior's stern gaze clearly demonstrates that he has his own exclusive intentions regarding this unusual arrival. Firm footsteps echo across the stone floor, marking the caravan's final entrance into the area. The visiting team advances through the clan's areas, adopting an exaggeratedly arrogant attitude, measuring the space as if they dominated the entire property. Following the rule of etiquette, a clan reception official bows his head in gratitude for the long journey they have undertaken to the territory of Hebei. The family servants bow their heads in a display of utter surrender as the group of fighters walks straight past them, ignoring them. Sarim's squadron penetrates the Peng clan's domains, exuding a dense and savage presence. Walking through the grounds, Commander Guok inquires whether that family is truly all that they seem, while the fighter Yan criticizes the clan's young heir, calling him mediocre and poorly dressed. In an attempt to lessen some of this arrogance, the other member named Yu warns his companions that despite their harmless appearance, these are precisely the people who managed to exterminate the mythical Supreme Demon. The foreign troop fighter criticizes the rumors about the fall of that icon of darkness, calling it all a farce. Yu, on the other hand, orders her to end the debate immediately. Leader Zhou Min assesses the space and notes that this clan also harbors fighters willing to offer lessons. The side conversations of his group, he merely orders everyone to remain silent and continue marching across the courtyard. Young Soil amuses herself by striking an air sphere, while a staff member supportively states that there is no harm in making mistakes. Overflowing with vigor, the girl unleashes a powerful energetic blow into the air, revealing her delight at the recreational activity of that evening. Crossing the space, the arrogant fighter is delighted to see the girl and remarks on how cute the child is, inquiring about the little one's identity. Teammate quickly provides feedback, informing that it is the granddaughter of the Supreme Patriarch of the Peng family. Intrigued by the detail, Zhou Min adopts a cunning expression and decides that greeting the girl would be a nice suggestion. Noticing the arrival of the strangers, the employee stammers nervously and tries to communicate that the great commander is already waiting for them. However, the troop commander completely rejects the blockade and raises his hand, calling the woman audacious. Of any tolerance, the individual harasses the female worker by slapping her in the face, shocking even her group partner with his audacity. Adjusting his own position, the coward curtly warns that a simple employee has a duty to understand her inferior position in the presence of important visitors. Suddenly, the crimson toy takes off with force and hits the arrogant commander squarely in the skull, completely surprising him. The individual blinks in bewilderment upon experiencing the gentle tap and observes the dropped item, trying to process the object's origin. Grasping the sphere in his hands, Zhou Min examines the childish object, its gaze sharp and utterly lethal. By the cruelty, young Soil stomps heavily on the ground and yells, ordering him to stop the evil deeds. The girl points her finger, overflowing with bravery, blaming the visitors for being evil beings for assaulting the housemaid. Indignant at being labeled as bad, the fighter from the visiting team loses her temper and insults the girl, calling her a brat. In a display of utter cowardice, the woman delivers a sharp blow with her finger to the little girl's forehead, causing Soil to immediately cry out in agony. The villain belittles the event, declaring that the girl needed to be grateful that she hadn't used force purely because she considered her quite beautiful to bear the terror and the injury. The girl collapses in a loud, terrified cry in the center of the open area. Suddenly, a monstrously dark shape envelopes the foreign fighter, who turns her bewildered face, experiencing a sinister aura on her back. With rage, the giant Taeson raises his terrifying figure and demands justification regarding what that piece of trash plans to do with the girl. Turning her attention to the brute, Zhou Min inquires ironically about who the intruder might be and questions whether this is how the clan receives its visitors. Taking a step back, the White Wolf fighter coldly replies that they only host visitors with consideration when those visitors adopt such a stance. Taking on the conflict, the other member of the outsider group steps forward, challenging the giant to a genuine battle. The tense atmosphere is broken by the sound of measured applause from leader Zhou Min, who seeks to ease the tension before the fight escalates. Maintaining a conciliatory facade, he claims that it is pointless to inflame such a futile misunderstanding and orders his group to retreat. However, Vice Commander Chemu emerges, exuding an overwhelming desire for death, demanding justification for the fact that they attacked the clan's family. Identifying the renowned squadron, the commander of the Sarum resorts to extreme hypocrisy in order to apologize for not having realized the target of his dialogue. Seeking to alleviate the situation, Zhou Min proposes to provide justifications in the future. However, he suggests resolving the dispute right there and then through a classic method. Adopting a confrontational stance, he proposes a friendly battle between the groups in order to purify pride. Inside his head, the visiting leader recalls the rumors about the White Wolf having overcome the legendary demon and feels his blood boil. Commander immediately realizes that the whole scene boils down to a clear trap, but his vanity screams louder than caution. Chemu inwardly admits that she would never give up that duel, especially in front of her foreign commander, who at this moment is comforting the young Soil. Grinding his teeth resolutely, the swordsman accepts the insult without a second thought. With his palm positioned on the blade, the acting commander of the family seals the duel and announces that the clash will take place. From the courtyard in the majestic main hall, the young successor asks his father if he doesn't harbor the slightest unease regarding the foreign presence. Consuming the tea peacefully, the great leader laughs at the question and assures that there is no reason to be alarmed by such despicable trash. Considering the patriarch to be overly optimistic, the talented young man suspects that the commander has some hidden purpose in granting access to that troop. Praising the heir's perspicacity, the old man notes that there is no need for him to understand the details at the moment. However, the dialogue is interrupted by a lackey. The watchman enters the premises, terrified, struggling for breath, to describe the commotion that has just broken out outside. Absorbing the information, the family leader strikes the piece of furniture with such savage energy that he shatters the material, completely in rage. Burning with rage, the Supreme Commander growls that the terrible visitors had the audacity to bother the workers of the dwelling. Man's fury reaches its peak when he realizes that the outside rabble had the audacity to hurt his beloved granddaughter. Of limits, the leader rises, demanding to walk to the area immediately to crush those responsible using their own palms. Terrified by the idea of diplomatic battle, the young heir pleads with the patriarch to back down and warns that he will seek to resolve the event primarily through diplomacy. Having secured the old man in the enclosure, the brilliant young man hastily departs, abandoning the commander panting with anger in his seat. Isolated in his surroundings, the patriarch continues in a state of inner turmoil, vowing to inflict a horrific punishment on whoever dared to harm his family. To the open sun-drenched space, Jo-min proposes that the clash take place in the format of single fights, a suggestion accepted by the vice commander. Taesun advances, assuming leadership with overflowing confidence, demanding to know who will become the first enemy to cross his path. At the opposite extreme, the fighter Yu walks, wielding his blade, vowing to use little force in the confrontation with the clan giant. Combatants settle down a few meters apart, gauging each other's energy levels in complete stillness. Following the ceremonial norm of combat, the foreign fighter performs a courteous bow prior to the start of the physical confrontation. Maintaining the same amount of obligatory courtesy, Taesun raises his clenched hands and announces that the clash of impacts will begin. Swift movement, Yu swings the blade with maximum power, however the giant blocks the violent impact, using his arm shields. Brutal impact generates a pulse of power that lifts the pole into the air, demonstrating that absolutely none of those involved are holding back their own strength. Experiencing the target's unreal durability, the visitor is left utterly astonished by Taesun's overwhelming firmness. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the White Wolf member uses pure brutality to counter the attack and throw his opponent far away. Sliding across the rocky floor, the faction fighter curses the situation, experiencing the sensation of having just collided head-on with a rock formation. Make a fool of himself, Jo-min assesses the situation and orders him to stop the jokes and duel for real. Exuding an atmosphere of high expectations, the commander warns that failure under those conditions would tarnish the honor of the entire Murim alliance. Understanding the hidden intimidation, Yu grips his weapon with all his might, vowing not to disappoint. Quickly requests a pardon and departs, again altering his stance completely to employ a substantially more deadly method. In a violent cadence, the visitor attacks, brandishing a sword laden with utterly murderous intent. Of red force plunges down, tearing through the oxygen, revealing the genuine power of the Alliance's elite troops. In the final millisecond, Taesun notices in panic that the blow is focused on a deadly target devoid of any shame. The sword touches the victim with barbarity, and the sound of the laceration echoes through the terrain as the situation slips out of control. Giant suffers a hard blow right in the center of his chest, experiencing the excruciating pain of that treacherous attack that broke through his armor. Terrified by the treachery in a training combat, Shamu and the rest of the troop frantically fire away to try and intervene. Shouting in support of their comrade, the clan's fighters watch helplessly as the big man falls prostrate, belly up onto the rocky ground. Rage, the vice commander grabs the despicable fellow by his clothes, punishing the cruelty of focusing on a vital area during a mere exercise. Desperation of her opponents, the foreign fighter orders them to stop shouting and making such a spectacle over such a minor matter. Pretending to be a mediator, Commander Jo-min orders the woman to remain silent and offers an apology filled with hypocrisy and devoid of genuine feeling. At the foreigner Yul, the cowardly leader mocks him with cruelty, pointing out that at least the injury didn't result in death, thus testing the commander's composure. Absolutely outraged, Vice Captain Chemu inquires about the audacity of the rival commander punishing the wickedness of that disloyal attack in the open environment of the clan. A sly smile, Jo-min suggests they prolong the confrontation, joking that he already apologized for using a low blow. Amused by the scene, the antagonist ridicules the vulnerability of the local team, highlighting that they will very rarely have another opportunity to experience the place in such a pleasant way. Shaking with pure rage, the swordsman curses the lack of consideration from those individuals, noting the level of insanity of the opposing troop. However, the tension dissipates the moment Yule steps forward with a grand gesture, accepting the duel with an air of calm. Disregarding the lackey's distress, the foreign captain agrees that since the visitors have traveled a long distance, the ideal course of action is to continue the fight right there. Taking upon himself the burden of the moment, the protagonist officially introduces himself under the title of leader of the White Wolf, obtaining a return of falsified education. Su, maintaining his irritating arrogance, the commander of the Serum, considers the offer curious but decides that the rules of that entertainment needed to be changed. A confrontational stance, he maliciously proposes that they both engage in a game of endurance to determine who truly governs the space. Displaying a gentle smile, Yule agrees to the plan and warns in extremely discreet manner that he has only begun to understand the fundamentals of hand-to-hand combat. Experiencing utter offense at the unrealistic modesty, the visitor immediately accepts the insult, believing himself to be the target of ridicule by the novice. Removing his sword from its sheath with great resolve, the cowardly fellow announces the resumption of friendly combat through a rather dangerous approach. Settled in the center of the brightly lit room, the two leaders stare at each other with a tense atmosphere, patiently awaiting the first attack in the duel. Wasting a single instant, the antagonist fires like lightning at the stone base, shrinking the space while striking a rather violent and deadly pose. Surprising his confident rival, Yule blocks the devastating blow with absurd ease, relying solely on his worn training blade. Due to the perfection of the defensive impact, the commander of the Serum is thrown ferociously backward, losing his balance completely in mid-air. Against the backdrop of this surreal scene, the members of the foreign troop fall into a complete stupor, unable to comprehend how the robust leader was ultimately defeated. Sporting a dark, confident smile, the protagonist positions his amateur tool, fearlessly charging the next candidate. Landing with extreme difficulty, the villain utters curses in frustration, noting the displeasure of having underestimated his rival. His perverse mind, the coward concludes that the intellectual concealed his true abilities all along solely to orchestrate a profound humiliation. Irritated by the early fall, Zhou Min yells, rudely ordering his lackeys to rush in without delay, reminding them that the opposing captain is still waiting for them. The visiting fighter hesitates for a second and warns about the peculiar aura emanating from the target, however the warning is ignored. Seething with anger due to the timidity of his own squadron, the leader insults his companions, labeling them worthless for cowardly retreating at a critical moment. Walking towards resuming the duel, he boasts of representing the greatest prodigy educated by the Muram Alliance, assuring that the artifice of the unexpected has definitively ended. Adopting a noticeably more focused martial stance, the antagonist coldly communicates to the foreigner to act with caution in the face of the savagery of his blade. The insult without substance, the head of the family uses sarcasm, suggesting that people lacking experience have a habit of behaving with precisely this arrogance. Consumed by senseless rage, Zhou Min attacks, brandishing his gleaming tool, vowing to leave the audacious disabled man right in the middle of the field. Witnessing the savage attack, the White Wolf second in command's eyes widen, validating the genuine risk inherent in that combat attack. The swordsman clarifies in a panic that this is an absolute blow passed directly through an ancient monarch, which attests to the seriousness of the attack. Filled with distress, Chemu deduces in terror that despite the typical arrogance of young men, this opposing commander does not qualify as an enemy with whom the chief can duel in an uncompromising manner. His maximum acquired capacity, the organization's remarkable young man launches a very fast and lethally destructive straight-line attack. A storm of brilliant attacks takes over the landscape, pushing the pace of the fight to its peak within a merciless routine. Maintaining a terrifying composure despite the strain, the main character wields his feeble training sword to intercept each move with pinpoint accuracy. Slipping after missing the sharp blows, the antagonist exhales outrage, noting the grotesque ease with which the opponent escaped completely unscathed. Refusing to embrace the impending disaster, he gains momentum by shattering the rocky ground and attacks again using a different strategy. Outside unleashes a colossal blue-toned energy blast, aiming to annihilate the persistent rival using purely savage energy and dirty tricks. Summoning an exceptionally devastating skill, a tear-inducing energy surges from the heights, aiming squarely at the head of the serene captain. Deafening impact sends smoke billowing across the area, yet the stranger's resolute pose remains perfectly rigid in the center of the tremor. A remarkably smooth and spontaneous gesture, Yule repels the fatal blow sideways, extinguishing the bestial power without making the slightest apparent charge. Caught completely off guard due to the impeccable protection, Zhou Min stammers in disbelief as he witnesses his ultimate attack being cancelled in such a humiliating way. The coward's reasoning collapses, for he held the firm conviction of seeing his opponent crawling on the floor begging for mercy. Completely irrational and rejecting the harsh truth, the opposing commander screams in agony and launches into a directionless and illogical attack. Breaking through the antagonist's irrational rage, the commander displays a grim smile and announces in a menacing tone that his opportunity to have some fun had finally begun. Chill laden with pure terror runs down the spine of the Alliance fighter, realizing far too late the lethal danger contained in that thoughtless action. By a genuinely suffocating pressure, the family leader adjusts his mock weapon in the shadows, bringing light to the terrain with terrifying force. Focusing his rival's fury directly into his eyes, Jo Min is left completely paralyzed by sudden fear, experiencing his very essence freezing. His eyes widen in utter terror as his oxygen fails him at the prospect of a terrible humiliation. A giant straight shot brutally pierces the landscape, striking directly through the center of the vulnerable figure of the false great exponent. Seems to suddenly stop at the moment when the individual merely lowers his discolored face, failing to mount the slightest defense of energy in his lower limbs, and displaying the shattered spirit of a fighter. The fearful man collapses to his knees on the stony ground, completely defeated. Humiliation devours the foreign commander, surrendering to a ridiculous outcome and falling defeated before the eyes of every individual positioned there. Witnessing the overwhelming triumph taking shape, the entire White Wolf troop erupts in a shower of applause and shouts of euphoria, celebrating the splendor of their leader. Chimu arrives exuding relief and praising the brilliant execution, while the main character returns the compliment by questioning the injuries of his squad. Gracefully through the exercise area, the talented young man of the family lets out a laugh, confessing that only he possessed the secrets of his brother-in-law's hidden secrets. Overflowing with calmness and contagious pride, the partner rushes to embrace her husband, congratulating him on the speed of his triumph, making the fighter appear embarrassed. The couple's tender intertwining definitively ends that pointless pressure, revealing the deep love built between them. Witnessing the united corps and their lackeys celebrating, the commander takes a deep breath, enjoying the peaceful conscience of having offered a good moral lesson. To the rough, stony ground, the wounded antagonist lets out a sigh full of pure suffering, acting urgently to salvage a fraction of his pride. The foreign troops rush frantically to help their fallen commander, while he lets out a stifled roar born of extreme disappointment. Consumed by a dark rage and wounded pride, the fearful man vows inwardly that he will never accept such a humiliating defeat without returning the blow. In a state of shock at the commotion, the fighter from the Central Force proposes that they disappear from the scene immediately, despite having just joined the pompous clan. Seeking to behave more prudently, the partner suggests that it would be wise to rest from the exhaustion resulting from the long trip before undertaking any escapade. Defeated commander's gaze shrinks through a mixture of insanity and deep sorrow, completely disregarding the reasonable precautions of his group. By boundless rage, the fearful figure vents his enormous resentment by violently striking the face of his own subordinate, who was trying to protect him. Staring at his partner lying on the wooden floor, the antagonist calculatingly intimidates anyone who dares to defy his directives once more. Possessed by the absolute madness of the situation, he stipulates adopting an insane stance that he will exterminate anyone who hesitates to silently comply. Dense silence takes over the darkened corridors as soon as the sturdy doors slam shut, signaling the furtive departure of that unwelcome entourage. Protected by the darkness of the cold night, the expendable band of the Alliance flees fearfully from the Peng family's possessions without uttering a single farewell. Parked with his arms resting on the top of a building, the stranger watches from afar every step of that hasty and noiseless departure. With their clothes gently billowing in the night breeze, the captain certifies that their journey outwards is irrevocable and free from further disturbances. Expansive landscape of the fortified area under the lights imposes a beautiful contrast with the heavy atmosphere of the small group making their way through the icy mountains. Sporting a calm smile on his face, the head of the family experiences a vast relief at finally cleansing the environment of such a repulsive figure. Terrifying forest quickly swallows up the defeated group, sealing the humiliating outcome of that diplomatic meeting rife with hidden agendas. Gnist's sharp vision unequivocally demonstrates that despite his apparent tranquility, he will remain eternally alert, aiming to eliminate any dirt that arises. Moving swiftly through the woods in utter terror, the distraught head of the foreign commander boils, with horror evoking the overwhelming energy of the audacious. He recalls that although he had been restricted to 1,000th, he succeeded in proving the bitterness of his own confinement in the face of that dreadful blow. The memory of the stranger's unbreakable pose torments his thoughts, making him experience the feeling of being utterly useless trash. With grief, the fearful man struggles to regain his composure by crushing his clenched fist, and resolves that he simply needs to never again cross paths with that monstrous being. To the clan, the commander observes the night illuminated by constellations and smiles, extremely pleased with the positive destiny that awaits him. Far from the property, the foreign troops' escape comes to an abrupt halt when spheres roll across the ground near everyone's support bases. At that precise moment, the father of the family senses a strange change in the wind and turns his face away, quite fearful of the danger. Forest landscape is thrown into chaos as the balls explode, releasing a dense smoke, forcing the warrior to scream in terror for everyone to stop breathing. As the purplish dust settles, the organization's rabble, illuminated by the moonlight, realizes that they have been completely engulfed by a horde of terrifying silhouettes. Taking the lead in the siege, the commander of the intruders displays a menacing expression on his mask and confirms that he has finally stumbled upon the famous Sarim squadron. Struck by the toxin, the fugitive's vision widens as he spots the sinister skull mark on those clothes. Overwhelmed by terror thanks to the trap, he hesitates, wondering why the terrifying demon cult extermination team is occupying that space. The formidable antagonist sarcastically comments on the group's courtesy in abandoning the fortification, so quickly praising the poisoned fog for having performed its mission of containing them very well. Experiencing the paralyzing effects of the substance on his inner power, the defeated prodigy sweats profusely, attempting to devise a desperate escape plan. Nearby, his groupmate succumbs to stupor, uttering the cult's label, filled with pure horror at the imminent threat. Without hesitation, the commander turns away and flees in terror into the vegetation, disregarding his colleagues' shouts calling for his return. Henchman's plea falls silent in a snap the moment a sharp tool pierces his frame. During a treacherous attack from the rear, the young man falls lifeless to the ground, eliciting a scream of panic from the woman as the murderer mocks the organization's supposedly superior strength. Camouflaged on the back of a thick tree trunk, the cowardly commander watches the fatality and deduces that those sectarians undoubtedly appeared aiming to collect something of extreme importance. Consumed by personal greed, he vows to himself that he must preserve his existence without regard for cost, even if it results in him being the sole survivor of that horrific scenario. Cornered by her opponents, the fighter demands to uncover the intentions of those people towards them, listening to an ironic flattery from the old man about her mental agility. The sect member imperiously determines that he will preserve only one individual in order to leak secret data, turning the survivor into a spy under their absolute command. He clarifies in an impersonal way that the target will reap a physical scar and will need to ingest a dominating toxin that confers absolute loyalty for eternity. Trembling with horror at the imminent ruin, the woman hesitates slightly before accepting the humiliating offer aimed at saving her own neck. At this moment, the cowardly man leaps from his hiding place, displaying a repugnant grin, formally assuming the role of the legitimate commander of that troop. Without the slightest trace of character, he shoves his colleague wildly, vowing to prove himself a far superior infiltrator to her. Such treachery to be splendid. The elder raises a finger, calmly communicating that he only possesses a minimum requirement to sign the pledge. To the frightened girl, the sectarian demands that the boy murder his own colleague on the spot to demonstrate his loyalty, leaving the radiant fugitive behind. Sickly laugh, the individual accepts the condition, without the slightest hesitation, stating that he already plans to exterminate her regardless of the pact. Revolted by the despicable behavior, the fighter curses the former leader, calling him scum, and yells that he will be consumed in the underworld because of his betrayals. The echo of a swift attack reverberates through the frozen forest, silencing the curses and irrevocably suppressing the final obstacle in the path of the overbearing antagonist. Enraptured by the scene, the sinister old man rests his hand on, congratulates him on the cruel act, naming him a gifted individual. An imposing figure, the antagonist celebrates the co-opting of his new partner for his dreadful division and decrees that he must prove his worth from this moment forward. Stained by the treachery he committed, Jo Min welcomes the decision with a sickly smile, vowing complete loyalty to the new administration. However, the fugitive's smug pose melts away in a fraction of a second as soon as he detects an utterly unreal commotion nearby. Amidst the shadows illuminated by the crimson hue, the sovereign silhouette of the foreign captain suddenly bursts forth with the aim of ruining the celebration of the cowards. Trash's gaze widens in a terrifying way as shock paralyzes every fiber of its wounded body upon recognizing the monstrous creature. A devastating and almost invisible offensive yule cuts through the forest environment, eliminating the entire sectarian band with a single merciless maneuver. The family man lands with a light movement and laments the antagonist's decision, emphasizing that such weakness perfectly reflected the scenario he had envisioned before. Illuminated by the moonbeams, the protagonist declares with coldness that the individual's final path would be quite different if he maintained his righteousness until the end. Shaking in terror on the ground, the remaining man sheds shameful tears, trying to defend himself by saying that he only committed that atrocity because he needed to stay alive. The fighter's thoughts recall his previous existence, remembering that this nobleman of the organization also stabbed his companions and carried out countless atrocities at the sect's command. Looking back at the current situation, the hero admits, exuding peace, that he genuinely nurtured hopes that the young man would embrace a different path this time. Releasing his tool into the environment, the leader determines in a dense tone that each individual must bear the consequences of his unique resolutions. Falls with millimetric precision, categorically closing the door on the experience of that presumptuous residue once and for all. Observing the terrain covered with fallen figures, the foreigner concludes that the ideal narrative to spread in this context is one of joint extermination, mutually generated by both sides. A serene voice supports the brilliant strategy, and the extraordinarily talented young man from the family emerges walking unhurriedly through the woods under the night sky. The successor corroborates the alibi of the shared extermination aimed at preventing the complicated rival group from rising to the level of legends of bravery in the locality. Yule confesses to hating providing false fame to that bunch of bad people. However, he admits that the real facts would push the honor of the central organization into a dangerous abyss. Gazing at the antagonist in a humiliating defeat, the leader mocks the scene, questioning the value of preserving pride when dealing with individuals who have migrated to the world of the dead. Is the brother-in-law's wise words? Seojin nods slowly, but soon a colossal question invades his brilliant mind. He secretly inquires how the foreigner managed to foresee that exact division of the sinister sect would appear precisely in that space in the middle of the night. Furthermore, the young man is curious about how the protagonist became so certain of the squadron's swift betrayal of the organization, aiming to fall into the sex trap. Watching the rigid pose of his familiar figure moving through the darkness, the young successor wonders to himself what kind of mind-boggling history this captivating individual is carrying with him. Far from the verdant mountain ranges, in a refined and considerably dark room, the sharp sound of a paintbrush breaking through the heavy silence. A sovereign commander perched in his royal chair demands validation of the bizarre information, while the crouching lackey stammers, filled with utter terror within the space. The veteran, displaying a cold, detached tone, questions whether there is any factual basis to the extermination of his elite by teenagers lacking experience within the rival organization. With hatred over the unsolvable ruins, the shadowy master grumbles, declaring such an abrupt calamity befalling the group unacceptable. Rising from the furniture in a rude manner, the man shouts, pointing out that the whole scene was transforming into a brutal mess, hindering his plans. To vent his overwhelming dissatisfaction, he extends his arm bathed in density and begins to suffocate the unprotected messenger from a distance. Suffocating force of the compression ends the victim's life in a fraction of a second, revealing the ruthless barbarity possessed by the commander of the shadows. Lifeless carcass of the emissary collapses noisily onto the blackened floor of the enclosure, proving lethal failures for those who deposit bitter agendas in that environment. Settling once more into his armchair of authority, the commander crunches his mouth and perfectly deduces that without a doubt an extraordinary event has unfolded far from a simple stalemate in the aforementioned woods. Striking a glorious and terrifying pose, the cult leader crosses his arms, intrigued and yearning to uncover the true monstrous entity responsible for tearing apart his highest-ranking team.